Back on the record, case number 12 CF 1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Okay. We're getting Ms. Gentile back on the stand. Are you ready to play the tape for her?
Yes, ma'am.
Guy now he's out of the car and he's chasing, I think.
Yes, we are.
Ms. Gentile, we are back on the record at the moment, and we are going to play for you part of the recorded interview that you gave to Mr. Della Rianda in person on April 2nd, 2012. We're going to play a piece of it, so I'd like you to listen in particular to the first question, the first comments that Mr. Della Rianda makes, and then your answer right after that. Do you know what we're focusing on now?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to continue it a little longer after that. Feel free to listen to it carefully, but the one thing we want to know for sure is what you said following Mr. Della Rianda's first comments and question.
Yes, sir.
Did he ever describe, yeah, the guy now, he's out of the car and he's chasing. I know you said he said the guy was following, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
You want that too?
I want to know the truth, did he say that or not? If he didn't say that, that's fine. I mean, I don't need to know.
Like when he like walking.
I know Trevon is running, right, or walking.
Yeah.
My question is, did Trevon ever describe to you, hey, you know, like if I see a football game, I say, yeah, the guy was running fast, or the guy, you know, ran to the left. Did he ever
When he was at the mail thing,
Yeah.
the man was on the phone.
Right.
That's what he's telling me.
I'm sorry, wait, what?
He's telling me the man was on the phone. He put his hoodie on.
Right.
So the man was still in the car. Then Trayvon started walking. Then he said, I think the man got off by some reason. Cause he
That's
said
what you believe? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he said the man was still following him.
Okay, so he didn't say like the man got out, but
Yeah.
he just believed that.
Yeah.
But Trevon didn't tell you the man got out of the
Yeah.
car. Okay, all right.
You know, that's the video or the audio clip that we wanted to proffer to this witness.
Well, then ask her your next question for the proffer.
After hearing Mr. Delarianda's comment and question that ends with, "But did he ever say the guy got out of the car?" your answer was, in fact, you want that too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I'm going to ask that this be played for the jury. Thank you.
She's agreeing with it. It's improper. It's not a dispute, so why is it being played? And I apologize, I'm just not trying to make a speaking objection, but,
I understand what you're saying, that it would not be impeachment.
right.
The objection is, why is it going to be played? Because it's not impeachment, since she indicated that that was her answer.
You know, the court ruled, I thought, a moment ago when I said I'd like to play it for the jury, and the court assented.
That there is an objection, and the objection was that that statement was not impeachment, since she had said that, yes, that's what I said.
This witness squarely denied having said it before the jury.
Okay, well, you can ask her that question
And I
again.
want to play the recording for the jury so they can hear it for themselves, not just the sort of naked answer, yes, I did say that, you want that too. I want the context of it. And I want the nuance of the language and the idea that this witness was, in a sense, saying to Mr. Delarianda, do you want me to give you an answer on that too? And Mr. Delarianda's response is, I want to know the truth.
I understand, because I've heard it too, and I understand your argument, but for impeachment, you have the witness, in this case, listen to, in other cases, it's read to themselves what the question and answer was, and then you ask them, is that what you said? And they admit it, or they say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. If they say, no, I didn't, then that's impeachment, and you play it for the jury, and she's admitting that that's what it was. So
Your Honor, my response there is that...
I'm not finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So to play that in front of the jury is not impeachment. That's the objection. And you can ask Ms. Gentile in front of the jury, did you have an opportunity to listen to your statement? Yes. And do you now, I'm going to ask you the question again, is that your answer? If she gives an answer that is not what you think is appropriate, then you play it to the jury.
May I respond briefly?
Yes, you may.
When this witness was confronted with a transcript before
She
the jury...
wasn't given a transcript on that. She asked for one, and you said you wanted to play the tape. And that's when I said we'd do that outside the presence of the jury. She was not provided a transcript on that questioning.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, but I believe that she was. I handed her 2 transcripts, and my transcript said, you want that too. Mr. Delarianda's transcript said, you want that too, but it had another word or two after it, and the witness under oath in front of the jury said, I never said that. I want to let the jury hear this witness's own words. Now, I have the right to confront her with her own words in front of the jury, and her own words are on this recording. So I want to play the recording for the jury as to what this witness denied, first of all, under oath, which has now been, I think, indisputably proven to be true.
Okay. You can ask her that question, and if she denies it, you can play it for the jury. But you've given her an opportunity to listen to it and review it as if it were a transcript that she would review that had that on there, and she's now giving you her answer. If she answers differently when the jury is present, then you may play it.
Our position is we had the right
I
to...
understand your position. That's my ruling. Okay,
May I be heard any further?
No.
Thank you, Judge.
I'll refer you back to the court's rules. Are we ready to bring the jury in?
Yes, sir.
Jurors are present.
Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and while you're getting settled with your notepads and stuff, I'm going to ask you questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the lunch recess, did any of you have any conversations amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? Okay, no hands are being raised. Thank you. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gentile.
Good afternoon.
Before the lunch break, we were talking about a statement that you made to Mr. Della Rionda on April 2nd, 2012. Specifically, a part of that interview where Mr. Della Rionda asked you, did Trayvon Martin ever say that the guy got out of the car? Do you remember those questions?
Yes, sir.
And you remember me presenting you with a transcript of that interview where your answer was, you want that too. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And you also saw the transcript with from Mr. Della Rionda that said your answer was, you want that too, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I asked you, did you in fact say that, you said, I did not say that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the break before we reconvened, we have actually played that recording for you, have we not?
Yes, sir.
And we played that particular portion where Mr. Della Rionda said, did Trayvon Martin ever say that the guy got out of the car? Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
And you heard your answer as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in
Yes,
fact,
sir.
your answer was to Mr. Della Rionda's question, you want that too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much. Redirect.
And please support. Well, let's get first things out of the way. I gather I'm the bald-headed dude for purpose of the record. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I've got one of those last names that most people can't pronounce. And so, anyway. I'm curious. You grew up, I guess, in a Haitian family?
Yes, sir.
Your mother speaks Creole or Haitian?
Creole. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And the reason is, I wonder in terms of from a culture or just from learning English. English was not my native tongue, and I spoke Spanish first. So, in doing that, did you learn Creole first, or did you learn English first? In terms, and I'm curious. Sometimes there's a cultural thing. When we say things, it isn't as clear to everybody.
Creole and Spanish.
Okay. You also mentioned that you were showing a letter, correct? I believe it's a defense exhibit. Madam Clerk, do you have that in front of you? Oh, I'm sorry. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Defense exhibit 17. You recognize this here?
Yes, sir.
That is, please stand up and leave. You may proceed.
It's Defense Exhibit 17, which is the letter that you wrote to, actually you didn't write, you had somebody else write on behalf of you to Sabrina Fulton, the victim's mother?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you need to speak, it's confusing because there's two microphones here, you need to speak into that one. You recognize the letter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you had a friend of yours write it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you can write in cursive, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also can't read in cursive, correct?
Yes, sir.
Leading. This is redirect.
I'm going to rephrase it. Can you read in cursive? Can you read cursive?
No, sir.
Can you write in cursive?
No, sir.
You were asked about the friend that wrote that letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's a friend that you asked to write it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were also asked about numerous questions about the interview that you gave me, the statement you gave me when I went down to, and I apologize, me in terms of with an investigator too, down in Miami. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. West asked you about the fact that the state attorney's office from Jacksonville had been appointed by the governor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In terms of you found out that we were handling the case.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you agreed to speak to me, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, as you stated, two cars went to a place where you were at a friend's house and we picked you up and took you down to take a statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were pretty emotional at that statement, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Was it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that statement, you, as best you could, attempted to tell what you remembered?
I'm objecting now. This is the third in a series of leading questions. This is redirect. There should be direct questions rather than leading.
I'll be glad to rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you, sustained.
You recall in that statement stating that, I'm sorry, the April 2nd statement that Mr. West asked you about, that Trayvon Martin was running away from the person?
Yes, sir.
And you also made reference that Trayvon Martin said the man described him as a creepy white.
Object that it is, well, at this point, beyond the scope of the cross-examination and not responsive to one of the issues raised during the cross. And it's also leading.
Overruled, and as to the first two objections, as to the leading, I will give a little leeway to get a frame of reference, and then make sure your questions aren't leading.
Yes, Your Honor. My question is, do you recall Mr. West asking you that Trayvon Martin referred to the man that was following him as a creepy white cracker?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say that. That's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
I'm sustained because I think the words were creepy ass cracker.
I apologize. Were the words creepy, pardon my language, creepy ass cracker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall Mr. West asking you about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, and to you, is that a derogatory, or is that the way people speak in your culture, your age group?
Objection leading.
Suggesting an answer?
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
You also made reference at some point that Mr. Trayvon Martin also referred to the person also with the N-word. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I say person, he's talking about the person that was following him, referred to using the N-word.
Yes, sir.
By the way, in that letter, may I approach?
Yes,
again?
ma'am.
That letter, Defense Exhibit 17, you actually read it, Trayvon Martin's name is misspelled. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
It's spelled T-R-E-R.
I object, it's leading.
Overruled.
It's spelled T-R-E-V-O-N. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
You mentioned also, when asked by Mr. West about the statement that you gave to Mr. Crump by phone, correct? Was that by phone, just to make sure the record? You weren't there in person, or were you?
By phone.
Okay. And Mr. Crump did not ask you specific questions about certain items or certain questions that I asked you specifically on April 2nd, is that correct?
Objection,
Yes,
leading.
sir.
Overruled.
Did Mr. Crump ask you specific questions like I did?
No, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West in terms of what happened, and you recall in the interview that you gave me on April the 2nd, the statement you gave, you referred to the man approaching Trayvon Martin, and it sounded like a bump. Do you recall using the word bump?
Yes, sir.
Objection.
I guess I don't quite understand what's going on here. Is this confronting the witness with her prior statement that he was present for?
What is your objection?
Well, it's leading, and it is improper impeachment. If anything, it's bolstering by a supposed prior consistent statement of some sort.
Overruled on all three.
Do you recall using the word bump in describing what occurred to Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir.
For the record, do you still live, Mr. West asked you about meeting with two individuals from FDLE in Miami. You still live in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West about the phone calls that you had with Mr. Trayvon Martin that day on February 26th. Would you agree that the phone records are the best records about that in terms of the length of the calls, whatever the times are?
Yes, sir.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do you have any recross?
Briefly, thank you, Judge. Ms. Gentile, you were born and raised in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke English at home?
What age you're talking about, sir?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Are you saying that English is your third language? That you spoke Creole and Spanish first?
I spoke 3 languages first. I learned how to speak 3 languages first, but Creole was the first one.
Does your mother speak English?
Not that well, sir.
Does she speak English?
Not that well, sir.
I understand she may have an accent or some limitations, but do you speak to her in English?
Sometimes, sir.
And if you're not speaking to her in English, you're speaking to her in Creole?
Yes, sir.
And your father, do you speak to him in English?
Yes, sir.
And when you went to school as a child, kindergarten, did you speak English at school?
Yes, sir.
And have you spoken English to your teachers and classmates in school up through today?
Yes, sir.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
I understand you. I understand you. I do understand English.
My question is, when someone speaks to you in English, do you believe that you have any difficulty understanding it because it wasn't your first language?
I understand English really well.
You've spoken it all your life.
Yes, sir.
And there's nothing that I've said to you today in English that, or yesterday, that you haven't understood, correct?
No, sir.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Mr. Delarianda said in reference to Trayvon Martin saying creepy ass cracker and using the N-word, that people speak like that in your culture. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Well, what culture is that where people describe other people as creepy ass crackers?
A pervert. A pervert.
Do you understand what I mean by the culture that you were raised in, the culture that
The
you live
area
in?
I was raised in. What you trying to say?
Right. I'll say it this way. Do people that you live around and with call white people creepy ass crackers?
Not creepy, but cracker, yeah.
So the creepy is the pervert part that you were talking about?
Yeah.
So forget that for a second. You're saying that in the culture that you live in your community, people there call white people crackers.
Yes, sir.
And do they use the N-word regularly?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying, so did Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin referred to white people as crackers, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, thank you, nothing else.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Gentile be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. You may be excused. If the state will please call your next witness.
We're going to ask that you remain under subpoena.
Okay, we're going to have to,
Excuse me.
well, she's going to return to Miami. Will we have notice before she would be called back? The state's releasing them from their portion.
We would
If-
like a few minutes to proffer some testimony is what I'm thinking. It could be at the end of the day today, or it could be at another time later in the proceeding.
Okay. Then I need to know if the defense has any objections to her returning to her home and then bringing her back.
Well, could we do it at the end of the day? And rather than inconvenience the jury, just have Ms. Gentile wait until the end of the day? Or
Okay, if counsel will please approach. There's a brief matter that we need to take up outside your presence. Thank you for your patience. If you'll please put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Demps out of the courtroom. Please be seated. Yes, you may approach. Ms. Gentile, we're going to allow you to go home, but I want to remind you that even though you're being excused from the court today, there is a possibility you may be called back to testify. So the subpoena that has been issued requiring you to be at court is still in full force and effect. So if you all are called back to testify, arrangements will be made for you to come back here, and you must be available under that subpoena until you are released by me, okay? You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, if you'll please follow Corporal Demps out of the courtroom, and after that, if we'll get the jury back in.
Judge, before they come in, could we have permission to set the document camera up and make sure it's?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I use my phone?
Pardon?
Can I use my phone?
As soon as you're out of the courthouse room, you can. Okay, is the defense ready for the jury to come back into the courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring the jury back in.
breath, Ron.
Please be seated. Mr. Manti, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. This court states called Ray McDonald.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McDonald, if you would, please go ahead and spell your last name for a court reporter. Tell us who you are, where you work, and what you do.
Okay, first name Raymond, last name MacDonald, MacDonald. And I'm a senior manager at T-Mobile, the wireless phone company.
Where do you operate from?
Our corporate headquarters is in Bellevue, Washington. Our office is in Parsippany, New Jersey.
And when you say our office, which office specifically, which branch or sort of agency of T-Mobile?
I'm with the Law Enforcement Relation Group. We're part of the legal department.
And as part of your duties there, do you have occasion to review, collect, and authenticate records of phone calls for T-Mobile customers?
Yes,
Okay. Are those records normally kept in the course of T-Mobile's business because you, of course, have to bill people?
yes,
And are they made at or near the time that the calls are documented?
yes, they are.
So this is sort of your monthly phone bill, and you guys keep all that stuff.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald, I'm showing you what's been marked for, and I think, sort of by agreement, sections of phone records for two T-Mobile phones marked currently as States Exhibits 166 and 167. You're familiar with the records reflected in those exhibits?
Yes, I am.
If there's no objection, I would be moving 166 and 167 into evidence.
No objection? No. 166 will come in as 166, as will 167 come in as 167.
Mr. McDonald, if you would please go ahead and tell us sort of how it is that these records get generated. How does T-Mobile get a paper record of a cellular phone call?
When a call is made, as the call goes through the T-Mobile network, on the switches in that network are billing gateways. Those billing gateways capture the information for billing purposes. That information is then sent out to the billing computers where it sits in a digital format, until which time it's called upon for whatever need the company has for those records.
The first set of records that I'd like to discuss is one that's affiliated with the phone number, the T-Mobile phone number, area code 407-435-2400. Do you see that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And which exhibit is that, sir?
This is States Exhibit 167.
Okay. And Mr. McDonald, if I could direct your attention up to the large screen. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to show you a portion of that record. Oh, boy. Here we go. That's better. And I'm going to ask you to tell us sort of what it is that we're looking at here, what kind of columns we're talking about. If I start with the left-hand column, is that the phone number that the records are associated with?
The left-hand column under the heading Misden, which is just a fancy term for the phone number, that is the phone number for the subscriber for those records.
If I'm looking specifically at the records for the 2/26/2012 date, you see that column there with the dates?
Yes,
And then I look in the destination column. I guess I'll start with the very top of that column. That series of numbers there starts with 216. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. What is that column?
That is an IP addressing. It's, all I can tell you, it's some type of IP session, some type of web session. That number, it's IP addressing.
So you're talking about an internet provider?
Yes.
If I go to the next sort of the next word, which is incoming in that column, what is an incoming call?
When you see incoming in the destination, it just simply means that the call is an incoming call, that it came into the subscriber's handset.
Okay. And so if it were a call being made by the subscriber, what would it say?
It will be, you see under the incoming, it will have a destination, like in this case, it will say Sanford, Florida.
Okay. As it does in the next line? then?
Yes, that would indicate an outgoing call.
Okay. And as for time, is that military time there, sir?
It is.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to move over for a moment to the call type. Tell me what that F means and what that D means over there in that column.
Well, the F is a mobile-to-mobile call. It's a T-Mobile to T-Mobile phone. And when you see a D, that indicates that it's a text message.
And if I go out just a little bit to number of minutes, what is that column designed to measure?
That's the number of minutes for the call,
So the duration of the call?
duration of the call, yes.
So under the time column, is that the start time of the phone call?
Yes, yes it is.
And then the number of minutes tells you how long it lasts?
Yes, we bill out to the minute, so it's, if you see the first one is 3 minutes, that would be anything between 2 and 3 minutes.
So let me guess, you round it up?
Yes.
As far as T-Mobile phones go, in your familiarity with their records, as far as the clock, the time that a call starts, unless the phone is altered in some way by the user, are all the T-Mobile phones going to use the same time?
The phones, if they're in auto time, then they would pick up the time for the area that they're in. Of course, most phones, people can set their own time on the phones also.
Okay. Now tell me about text messages and times.
Text messaging, the timestamp for text messaging is in Pacific time because it's default routing, and it picks up default routing, and it picks up Pacific time for the timestamp.
So if I look there, for example, the first D column I see for text message says incoming text message at 2014. Does that mean that the text message actually arrived at 8:14 p.m. Eastern time or Pacific time?
That would be Pacific time, and you would just add the 3 hours for Eastern time.
Okay, so that text would actually arrive in the phone at 23:14 instead of 2014?
Yes.
If the phone were in the Eastern time zone?
Yes.
To determine the length in seconds of the phone call, do you have to actually measure the recording itself and time it? In other words, you say, for example, if I look at the third call up there, the incoming call that says 3 minutes, you said that could last anywhere actually between 2 and 3 minutes. Would I have to actually time the phone call itself to get to the actual seconds?
With looking at these records, this type of billing format, yes.
Okay. And the same would be true of all the calls in that column?
Yes, with the exception of text messaging, it's going to show a 1. That's more or less a placeholder. It'll usually always show a 1 or a 0.
Okay. So I see 2 calls that I just want to direct your attention to in particular. One at 1908. Do you see that one?
Yes, I do.
So that would be made at 7:08 PM, and I think the column indicates that that lasts 5 minutes.
Yes,
Okay. And then there's a second one at 19:18 that lasts 1, and both of those calls are made to 407-688-5070.
yes, they're both outgoing calls to that number.
When you see a 1 in the number of minutes, does that mean that there actually was any conversation, or could it simply mean that there was a call and then a connection and an immediate hang-up?
In order for it to come on to these building records, there would have to be some type of connection. I couldn't tell you what that connection is, but a connection on the other end.
All right. And as long as there's 1 second of connection, it's going to show a minute, am I
Yes.
right? Because you get a bill for it, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move, if I could, not yet. You're good at 166. And now in looking at these records, I'm going to start, I guess, let me do it this way. If I look over to the left-hand column, that number I see there, 17863129558, what is that number?
That is that would be the number for these records. That would be the number of the subscriber for these records.
Okay, so that's the phone number.
Yes.
If I ask you the second column there that says voice, what does that mean?
That's the type of activity. It may say voice, it may say SMS, which short message service, it's a text message, or you may see data in there also.
Okay. And the third column, where we have a date, what appears to be a time, including seconds, what is that column?
That is the date and time of the call, or the activity of the phone.
And incoming and outgoing, does that mean the same thing as it did in 167?
Yes.
All right. As far as the next column where I see another long number, what does that column signify?
That would be the phone number that is either calling to the subscriber number or the subscriber is calling to.
Okay. And TMOUS, I can bet that stands for T-Mobile.
T-Mobile US, yes.
Okay. If I look at the last column, actually the last 2 columns over here, what do those columns signify in terms of, I'm going to ask duration for minutes and then durations for seconds?
Yes, these are the first column on second from the right to the left. That's your time of the call or activity in seconds, and it's actually rounded out, in minutes, and the seconds are rounded out in hundredths of a minute.
All right, so the far right column is seconds and the
Yes,
second to the right column is in minutes.
yes,
And again, you're rounding up.
yes.
So if I were to, for example, look at the highlighted call, which is the first highlighted call, 2/26/2012 at 7:12:06 p.m., does that tell me that that is an incoming phone call to this phone that connected at 7:12:06 on the evening of February 26, 2012?
Yes,
Okay. And the phone number that called that phone is 786-419-3726?
yes, that's correct.
And that phone call lasted 218 seconds or 3.63 minutes?
Yes.
The very first call on this sheet, it's not highlighted, but it shows a connection time of what, sir?
6:54 and 16 seconds p.m.
Okay, and it's that same phone number that ends in 3726?
Yes,
And it is for 17.53 minutes?
yes.
Let me ask you, the second highlighted call here, and in fact every call thereafter, where we alternate incoming, outgoing, all the way down the page,
Yes.
Okay. Beginning with that second highlighted call, it looks like it is 43 seconds or 0.72 minutes.
Yes,
Can
that's
you
correct.
tell me what these records indicate to you as far as the nature of that call and why we see alternated incoming and outgoing all the way?
Well, starting on 2/26/2012 at 7:16 p.m. and 24 seconds, you have the incoming call from 786-419-3726, and under that you see it appears to say outgoing to a 1-805-637-7249. That 805 number is our voicemail platform. T-Mobile's one of the voicemail platforms. So what you're seeing is the 3726 number is calling into the subscriber's number. It's not being answered, and it's dropping the voicemail. The reason it would appear to be an outgoing call, where it says outgoing, is a call drops into voicemail, the phone pushes that call over to voicemail. So on the records, it gives an indication of an outgoing call, but it's just going to voicemail.
So after the call at 7:12:06 p.m. gets disconnected, is every call thereafter go straight to voicemail?
To the bottom of that page, yes, that's what's happening.
Thank you, Henry. Judge, I have no. Your Honor, thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. O'Mara, are you going to need the lights on or off?
On for now. I may not need the records. So we're clear on the first call that we looked at. That was more of a truncated or a smaller amount of data was actually identified on that first record that we have. Didn't have the exact minutes and seconds, for example, correct?
You mean the first set of call records we looked
Yes.
at?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
that's correct.
By mine. I'm not going to approach you, but we're talking about the one that was on here.
Yes.
Right? Any reason why we don't have the detail on this one that you're able to show on this one?
It's just depends upon the application that's being utilized when the records are pulled. The first set of records is a different application. The second set of records, when we have certain requests, we'll go to that application to pull those records.
Sure. You could have been asked to bring these same records for the first number, right?
Sure.
Right. You just didn't. You were only asked by the state to bring the, I'm not diminishing it, but the more generic or less specific numbers for the first record that we reported or you testified about than you did for the second one, correct?
It would appear that way, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, had you been asked similar records for both, there would more specific detail, you would have brought them?
Sure.
Okay. Talking about the first phone call then for just a minute, we noticed that there were two phone calls. There was one for, I think, 3 minutes and one for 1 minute. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. That would be like if I called the number right now, was on the phone for 3 minutes, put the phone back, maybe I was nervous or something had happened to me, and I dialed and it pushed again. As long as it connected to that second call for even a second, it would show up as a minute, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yes.
You don't document that there was a conversation that second time, do you?
No, I can only say by looking at the records that there was a connection, but not what the connection was.
Sure. And as to the second, more detailed records that we just had you testify concerning, it seems as though from this report, there are the phone calls that he had you focus on, that he highlighted, correct?
Yes.
One lasted about almost 4 minutes, 3.63 minutes, correct?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you do minutes and seconds? I just have to ask. Why you have minutes and then you also have a column for seconds?
That's the way the application
Just
pulls
the-
the information.
Just a great
Yes.
computer telling us that?
Yes.
Okay. So there were those two phone calls that I think you testified did in fact connect because we know the timing of them, correct?
Yes.
But then we go down the list, and you can tell by outgoing is when it kicks it automatically over to a voicemail.
If
Is
I
that
see
what-
a call coming in ahead of the 805 number, which is one of our voicemail platform numbers,
Right.
and yes, I can determine that call dropped into voicemail.
Right, because if I'm calling this number, then you see the next thing is outgoing from that call, because that phone has basically called over to voicemail.
Pushed into voicemail.
Push it.
Yes.
Okay. And then there are a number of those lasting, I know you don't have this in front of you, lasting 20 seconds, 27 seconds, 7 seconds, 7 seconds. That's just whatever the length of the then voicemail is, correct?
Yes.
Or whatever the connection delay time is, and then the message being left on voicemail?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Just one. As far as getting the more detailed set of records or something, do those records have to be ordered within a certain time frame of their creation or their loss?
The records, the second set of records, because of the information that it contains, we only maintain those for a period of 6 months in the system.
So if they were asked for within 6 months of that time, you could have given it to them, but anything after that, you couldn't?
Yes, that's correct.
Another question.
No, sorry, just because I thought I knew it, now I'm confused. Which records do you only keep for 6 months?
The ones on your left, my right.
Okay, so this one, the more detailed one, you only keep for 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, no further questions.
Any further questions?
No, Your Honor, I'd ask you to be excused.
Thank you, Mr. Any objections?
No.
Mr. McDonald, you may be excused. Thank you very much, sir. Call your next witness, please.
Then we call Jennifer Lauer.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you have presented is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you.
You may proceed.
Please support. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury by giving us your name?
Jenna Lauer,
Okay, and could you spell your last name?
Lauer.
Ms. Lauer, it's a little confusing because you've got two microphones in front of you, but that's the one you need to use. The other one that appears bigger is actually not the one.
Okay.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
Real estate.
Okay. And could you briefly tell us about your educational background?
I have a master's degree in business.
Okay. Are you married, ma'am?
Yes.
And is your husband's first name Jeremy?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
A little over a year.
Okay. Do you have any kids?
No.
I'm not going to ask you for your current address, but do you and your husband live in Seminole County at this time?
Yes.
Okay. I want to draw your attention back to February of last year, 2012. At that time, were you living at the Retreat at Twin Lakes Townhomes in Sanford, Seminole County, Florida?
Yes.
And was your address at that time 1211 Twin Trees Lane?
Yes.
Is that a townhome?
Yes.
Okay. The jury's already had witnesses testify about the townhomes, but are they two-story?
Yes.
And are the bedrooms upstairs?
Yes.
Okay. You keep breaking up, and I think it's just the way the microphone is set up.
Okay.
Maybe the deputy can adjust it. Okay. Sorry, let me make sure everybody heard you. The bedrooms are upstairs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's a lot better. And are you in a corner, I guess the corner townhome of a building?
Yes.
Okay, and there are what, like 5 or 6 townhomes in that building, or are there more, do you know?
There's either 5 or 6, I'm not sure.
Okay. Could you describe briefly the layout? Are living quarters downstairs?
Yeah, when you walk in, the front door, the kitchen's on the left, and then the dining room and living room are in the back.
Okay. So is the living room facing the back courtyard or backyard, I guess?
Yes.
Is there a sliding glass door that lets you out into the backyard or back courtyard?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a porch in the back?
Yes.
Okay. The porch that you have, is it enclosed?
Yes.
And how is it enclosed?
Screen enclosure.
Okay. I know we're talking back in February, where you were living there back in February. It's screened in. How is it screened in? Just regular screens, or is it kind of glass screen, or?
It's just regular screen.
Okay. Does it have a regular screen door too?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to the screened patio, do you have any kind of blinds on the screen itself or on the porch, I guess, if I'm asking right?
Yes, we put in some like bamboo blinds over them.
Okay. And the day I'm going to talk about is February 26, 2012. That's Sunday. This porch that you had, the bamboo blinds, were they down, do you recall, or up, or how were they?
Down.
Okay. And down would mean what? I think I know what you mean, but we got to make sure the jury follows.
All the way down.
Okay, so all the way down to the floor?
Yeah, there's maybe a foot gap at the bottom that you can see out of.
Okay. Is there kind of, at the bottom part of the porch, is there kind of like a knee wall or something, or?
Yeah, it's probably about 1.5 feet high.
And then from there up is screen?
It's screened for about 1 foot, and then the blinds start.
Okay. So the blinds cover the majority of the screen porch, I guess?
Right.
Okay. And going back to February 26, 2012, how long had you lived at that residence approximately?
About 3 years.
Okay. Now, obviously Sunday the 26th of 2012, were you home that evening?
Yes.
Okay. And was your husband also home? Was Jeremy also home?
Yes.
Okay. At around 7 p.m., a little after, what were you and your husband doing that evening?
Just watching TV in the living room.
Okay. And if you could just briefly describe the living room in terms of couches, recliners, what were you and your husband positioned in relation to the TV?
We have a couch and a love seat, and the couch faces the TV, the love seat faces the sliding glass door.
Okay. So if I were looking out into the backyard or the courtyard from your sliding glass door, if I were looking out, the TV would be to the left or to the right?
To the right.
Okay. And is there more than one couch or more than one sofa?
Well, there's a sofa and a love seat.
Okay. Do you recall where you were and where your husband were that evening?
I was on the love seat facing the sliding glass door,
Okay.
and Jeremy was on the couch.
Okay. So he would have been on the opposite, I guess, or not? Is it an angle, I guess, or?
They're perpendicular.
Okay. You mentioned watching TV. Do you recall what you were watching?
Celebrity Apprentice.
Okay. And was that a recorded program or was it playing live at that time?
It was recorded.
Okay. How would you describe the volume on your TV when you and your husband were watching TV that evening?
It was pretty loud. I mean, where we normally keep it, but
All right. Now, that evening, do you recall the weather conditions?
yes, it was raining.
Okay. As a result of it being raining and it being February, do you recall whether you had your sliding glass door, whether it was open or whether it was closed?
It was open. We had it all the way open.
Okay. So in terms of the courtyard or the backyard, I'm going to call it, is there another name that you guys describe what you call that?
In the backyard.
Okay. The backyard, your view of the backyard and your husband's view on your vantage point from the couch and the love seat, are you able to see directly into the backyard or is your view obstructed?
It's not obstructed.
Okay, so are the blinds down is what I'm saying that evening? Were they down?
Yes.
Were you able to see through the blinds or what? Describe if you could the
During the
blinds.
day, I can see all the way through. At night, you cannot see past the blinds.
Okay. So your view is obstructed by the blinds, I guess is what I'm trying
At
to
night, yes.
Yes. Okay. The sliding glass door was open, but you had, I guess, was there a breeze coming in or at all, or?
No.
Okay. And when you say it was raining that evening, was it like at around 7 o'clock, do you recall if it was pouring rain or just intermittent, or?
It was a pretty steady paced rain for most of the day. That's why we had the door open. It was relaxing.
Okay. At some point that evening, close to 7 o'clock, 7:05, 7:10, around that time, did something draw your attention outside?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you could, as best you can describe, what first drew your attention outside?
I just heard voices.
Okay. The voices that you first heard, your TV was on?
Yes.
When you heard it?
Mhm.
The volume was on?
Yes.
When you first heard the noises, could you tell it was outside?
Yes.
Could you tell whether it was outside in the backyard or the front yard or somewhere else?
I could tell it was the backyard.
Okay. And the voices that you heard, were you able to make out any words from those voices?
No.
Okay. In relation to your backyard, specifically your porch, or let's get more specific, your living room, could you tell from what direction they were coming, or could you just tell they were outside somewhere?
I could tell they were coming from the left of where I was sitting.
Okay. And would that be, if you're looking out your porch, if I'm looking right out and your porch is right there, would they be to the left of you talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell how far away they were?
No, people walk their dogs in that area a lot, and it sounded like that area where I always hear them throwing out their trash and stuff, so.
Okay. And you mentioned words, or how would you describe what was going on? You could hear some noises. You could not make out any words?
Right, it just sounded like loud talking.
Okay. Could you tell whether at that point, whether there was one individual, 2, 3, 4? Could you tell how many?
No.
Okay. The voices, was it just like voices just going, or was there a gap in between? In other words, was there silence, or how would you describe that?
I keep calling it like a three-part exchange. Like
Okay.
one person said something, then another, then another. So
But could you make out any of it? Who said what?
no.
Okay. Could you tell there was definitely two persons, or did you just assume that?
I assumed it by the way they were speaking
Okay.
because it just sounded like one was answering the other.
Okay. But in terms of the tone of the voices, could you tell whether one was louder than the other, or were they the same, or?
It sounded about the same volume.
Okay. And would you describe the tone as flustered as opposed to confrontational?
Yeah, I would say more flustered.
Now, in terms of the voices that you first heard out there, when you heard them, did you do something and your husband do something in relation to your TV?
I muted the TV as soon as I heard the voices.
So you had control of the remote versus your husband?
Yes.
Okay. So you muted the TV, and what happened then?
Immediately after the voices and me muting the TV, I just heard them, whoever was out there, start scuffling around. I keep saying scuffling, so it sounded like sneakers on pavement and grass.
Okay. There's been, or let me ask you this. When you say grass, what do you mean by that? It's like movement on the grass, or I can't answer, I can't tell you what to say.
Like if
What do you
someone
mean?
was running on the pavement and on the grass,
Okay.
it sounded like that.
Okay. And on the grass and on the pavement, is there like a walkway back there?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk right next to the grass. So if like you were playing basketball right there or something, and you're just like moving around on the pavement in the grass.
At that point, could you tell whether there was one or two individuals?
I couldn't tell how many.
Okay. And you heard what appeared to you to be like a running? Is that how you described it?
No, I describe it as scuffling.
Scuffling, excuse me, okay.
Right.
And the scuffling, in terms of where it was it both pavement and grass, or just one, or can you tell the
It
difference?
was a combination of the both.
Okay. Is that the first time you ever heard noises outside?
No,
That residence?
no.
Okay, was it common to hear noises outside, or was that a first time?
No, like I said, people walk their dogs back there all the time, but not normally in the rain, so that was uncommon.
Okay. In terms of the second series of noises that you heard, if I understand it correctly, you heard some noises that drew your first attention to it. You couldn't make out what was being said, is that correct?
Right.
And then how long after that did you hear additional noises, the second round of noises that we're talking about?
It was immediate after I muted the TV.
Okay. Was there any gap at all?
No.
Okay. So it was just a continuation?
Yes.
Okay. How long did those noises keep going?
I honestly couldn't say.
Okay. You described it as a scuffle. Could you at that time, other than hearing scuffle in grass and concrete, could you hear anything else? Any exchange of words or any at that time?
No, after the scuffling, it gradually went into like a grunting
Okay.
noise.
Okay. All right. And when you say scuffling, were you able to actually hear somebody hitting somebody, or more just tell me how you described it?
It sounded more like if two people were rolling around. I mean, at first, it sounded like maybe people were standing up because
Okay.
I could hear sneakers on pavement. And then after that, it kind of just sounded like wrestling because at one point, I felt like they were about to come through the screen. I mean, it sounded like it kept getting closer and closer.
Okay. So the movement of that was closer and closer to your residence? Or
Yes,
the back of your residence?
right.
Okay. And you mentioned rolling or doing something on the ground, on the grass, is that correct?
That's how it sounded.
Okay. And I gather, just to get to the point about this subject, did you at any time see anything going on outside?
No,
And it's your knowledge that your husband see anything going outside?
no, he did not.
So it is the recount you're giving us of what occurred there just on basically what you heard as opposed to what you saw?
Only on what I heard.
You mentioned a sound, did you say like something besides the scuffling or movement on the grass? What else did you hear at that time? Any kind of grunting or something?
Yeah, it turned into a grunting, and then it gradually turned into yelping.
Okay. And are you sure whether the grunting started at the beginning when you heard the scuffling, or soon thereafter? Are you able to time it in terms of when it happened?
I couldn't give you a time, but it was soon thereafter the scuffling.
Okay. At some point, was there a decision made by you or your husband to call 911?
Yes.
And do you recall, in relation to when you first heard the first noise until you made a decision to call 911, how much time had expired?
I couldn't say. I mean, we decided to call 911 as soon as we heard the scuffling noises.
Okay.
So
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think you're trying to get to if we've ever tried to time it out or figure out. So from the time that I heard the noises that made me mute the TV to the time that I think my call actually got picked up from 911, I believe is about 30 seconds.
Okay. And what you and your husband did at a later date is just kind of recount in your minds and try to,
Reenact it.
all right. But at the time, you were just estimate as to how long you took from one time to the other? You understand my question? My question is, how long after did you reenact it, I guess?
I mean, it was a while.
Okay. And were you going just based on what your husband and you remember in terms of occurring?
Yes.
In terms of coming up with about the 30 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. I guess my question, and I've been inartful asking this, you did not look at a watch when it started to say, okay, it took 20 seconds or 30 seconds. You weren't looking at a clock or as it was going on?
No.
Okay. Your focus was on calling 911?
Yes.
Okay. Did you or your husband attempt to call 911, or did you do it at the same time, or how did that occur?
He tried to call first, but his phone had locked up on him, so I picked up my phone and called.
Okay. You mentioned some kind of noise. Were you able to make out any words at that point?
Which point?
At the point where you're getting ready to call 911, or at this point, are you able to make out any words at this point?
At the point where I'm dialing 911, it's what I describe as yelps. It wasn't actual words that I could make out yet,
Right,
but it was definitely yelling noises.
okay. So, if I understood correctly, you are the one that actually calls 911,
Yes,
and you use a cell phone to call 911.
yes,
Were you able to get in contact with the operator,
yes,
and were you able to speak to her?
yes.
Okay. When you're calling 911 and you're actually using your cell phone, where in your residence are you when you're calling 911?
I got up off of my couch and kind of went over to where the stairs are
Okay,
to call over there.
right. Now, are there stairs closer to your sliding door porch, or are they closer to the front door of your residence?
They're actually like on the same level, just down some.
Right. And I've been there, so I know, but I want to try to get to the jury to understand where you're headed. Are you headed more away from the sliding door, or are you headed towards the sliding door?
It's the same distance from the sliding door, just to the
At an
side.
angle? To the side? Okay. And why did you proceed to the stairs? Were you going to plan to go upstairs?
No, I just didn't want them to hear me. I didn't know if it was just kids fooling around or what, so I didn't want them to hear me snitching on them and calling the
Gotcha.
police.
So you were trying to become less obvious so that somebody could hear you. You were trying to move away, I guess, where somebody outside would be able to hear you?
Where they would not be able to hear me.
I'm sorry, where they would not be able to hear you.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what your husband was doing at that time?
He had gone into the kitchen. I think at that point we were kind of sure that someone was in danger or needed help, and I don't know if he was trying to find maybe a knife or something to go. The way our house is set up, our porch, there's 3 different locks on the screen and everything. It would be too hard to go out the back and not be like on top of them. So he was going to get something and maybe go around the front to go see, but that didn't happen.
Okay. You were able to get through 911.
Yes.
Right, and you spoke to the operator. And as you're calling 911 and speaking to the operator, at some point, do you actually hear a gunshot?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall in terms of when you made contact with the 911 operator to the time you heard a shot, and the jury will be able to hear it, but did you time it at any time to see how long it took, or how did it appear to you how long it took?
I didn't time it, and I don't know.
Okay. And as you're speaking to 911, are you still in the same position, or have you proceeded to the kitchen or any other part of the residence?
After I went over by the stairs to call, and as she was asking me questions and stuff, she asked if they were saying help, and at that point they were saying help. And Jeremy was in the kitchen, and I was trying to stop him from going out there because I didn't want him to get involved. And so I went into the kitchen to kind of stop him from doing what he was doing. And while we were both in there is when the gunshot went off.
So you were multitasking. You were trying to call and provide information to the operator, but also making sure your husband didn't go outside?
Right.
Okay. Now, at the whole time, do you have your phone, do you have it like on speaker, or do you have it like right next to your ear?
It's to my ear.
Okay. But are you still communicating with your husband, I gather?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. I guess an obvious question might be, at any time, did you get the phone and go out like to the porch or even to the sliding door and put it out so that whoever was on the other side of the operator on 911 was able to hear it clear?
No.
Okay. Was your entire conversation that's recorded that we're going to play to the jury, you talking to the 911 operator with your phone to your ear?
Yes.
In terms of what you referred to as, I believe you used the word they yell, do you recall how many times those yells were?
I don't.
Okay. Do you remember any particular words that you were able to hear other than you said, I believe, yelp, and did you say another word?
The yelps turned to helps.
Okay, so you were able to make out the word help?
Yes.
Okay, do you recall how many times?
I don't.
Are you able to say, based on what you heard, whether it was one person, 2 people, 3 people out there yelling help?
It was one person, yeah.
How can you say it's one person?
It just sounded like the same voice the whole time.
Okay. And could you tell whether it was a man or a woman?
It was a man.
Okay. Could you identify the person in terms of describing the person's voice? Who it is?
No.
Okay. Tell me if while you're hearing this help or cries for help, you believe one individual, whether you were still hearing, you described grass noises or scuffling going on.
I don't remember either way because I was answering questions and multitasking.
Okay. Did the noises stop at some point? The cries for help or the...
After the gunshot,
Okay. When you heard the gunshot, what did you do?
we kind of just ducked down to the ground in the kitchen and then tried to scurry our way upstairs. We just wanted to get away from the door and...
Sure. And when you say we, you're talking about your husband and you?
Yes.
At any time did your husband end up going outside?
No.
Okay. Did you and your husband make it upstairs?
Yes.
When you went upstairs, did you remain upstairs? I know at some point you went back down.
Right.
But I'm pointing at the time when this was going on, did you go out upstairs and look through the window at all?
No.
Okay. At any time in the conversation that you had with the 911 operator, did your husband get on the phone and also talk to the operator?
No.
It was just you exclusively?
Yes.
Okay. While you were talking to the 911 operator, did you hear, in addition to the voices you talk about, or the voice that yelled help, do you recall hearing anybody else out there?
I did hear my neighbor
Okay,
open his door.
all right. And is he your next door neighbor?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of your residence, you're on the corner, would that be right next to you?
Yes.
Right. And is his name John Good?
Yes.
Okay. And when you said him open the door, you actually heard the door open?
I heard it open and I heard him. I know his voice, so.
Okay. And when you say you heard, are you talking about the sliding glass door open?
Yes.
Does he have an enclosed porch like you do, or is his porch just an open piece of pavement on the ground?
It's just open.
And do you recall whether Mr. Good said anything when he opened the door? Do you recall hearing him say anything?
He said something along the lines of, what the hell are you doing?
Okay. And when you heard Mr. Good say that, at that time, did you continue to hear a voice or voices in addition to Mr. Good?
Yeah, the yelling for help continued.
Okay. Is there a light in your back porch?
Yes,
Do you recall that evening whether the light was on or off?
it was on.
And just to make sure, the light would have been inside the porch, or is there an outside light too?
It's inside.
Okay. So does that only illuminate the porch itself, or does it illuminate outside too?
Just the inside because the blinds prevent it from shining outside.
Your Honor, at this time, with the court's permission, we'd like to play the state's exhibit. I apologize. Ms. Lauer, you've had an opportunity to hear that 911 recording, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, thank you.
I apologize. And for the record, that's going to be, hold on, let me make sure. It is going to be State's Exhibit 158.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near?
1211 Twin Trees Lane.
Twin Trees Lane. Is this in the Twin Lakes homes in Sanford?
Yes.
Okay, and is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick. Say crap.
Okay. Does he look hurt to you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
Just there's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
This one. Jeremy, get down. No, come here.
Is he no
Babe,
longer
come on.
yelling?
No one, I don't know. Jeremy, get in here now. Jeremy, get up here.
All right, is he right outside 1211 Twin Trees Lane?
Yeah, pretty much out the back, yeah.
Is he in front of it or behind that address?
He's behind my house.
Okay.
Just stay away from the windows.
I don't hear him yelling anymore. Do you hear anything?
No, I don't because I'm hiding upstairs. There was a gunshot right outside our house.
Good morning, sir.
I mean, you've obviously sent someone already, right?
Yes, it's in dispatch. What's your name and phone number?
My name is Jenna Lauer, and my phone number is 407-701-8991.
And how do you spell your last name?
Lauer.
L-A-U-E.
They don't mitigate that.
Okay. All right, do you hear any vehicles leaving or anyone else? Do you hear anything right
There's
now?
people yelling out there, but I don't want to go down there, so.
Okay, multiple people are yelling now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we do have officers on the way. Just call us back if you do hear or see anything else suspicious, like any vehicles leaving or anything like that, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. 911, do you need...
That is your voice, and is that you talking to your husband at some point too, and an operator?
Yes.
Okay, and is that your husband speaking in the background?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what you recall hearing in terms of when you say voice or voices outside? Is that what you recall hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at any time, did you hear anyone outside your residence saying, pardon my language, you're going to die tonight, motherfucker? Did you ever hear that?
No.
Did you ever hear anybody say, call the police as you're hearing the noises?
No.
In terms of the voices outside, I know we've got the recording. The only word you could make out is help, or did you make out any other word out there?
I believe help and help me.
Okay. Are those the only words you heard?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. You heard something like a yelp, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, you didn't hear anything else out there?
Right.
At some point after you called 911, did you actually hear and at some point observe the police come out there to the residence?
I heard people out there, and then we waited a little while longer and saw lights and everything, so we knew the police were there.
Okay. And at some point, did you hear a person say, I have a gun, or take my gun, something like that?
I did hear someone say something along the lines of, I have a gun, take my gun.
Okay. And when you heard that, the person that uttered that, was that person just saying that? How would you describe how the person said that?
You know, like, just matter of fact, like, take my gun. So, you know.
And could you state, or you could identify who said that?
No.
Did you hear in the response to that person saying, as a matter of fact, just take my gun?
No.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you some photographs, and I know I'm going back to February of last year, the residents there at that time. and see if you can, thank you, Your Honor. First of all, do you recognize State's Exhibit 1? It's a Google zoom aerial photograph of the retreat at Twin Lakes. You see that, State's Exhibit number 1?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to attempt as best I can to zoom in. Is your residence right here on the corner that I'm pointing to, right there?
Yes.
When I say your residence, I'm talking back in February of last year.
Right.
Okay. And your backyard would be right here? Is that correct?
Yes.
And is this what's referred to as a dog walk or walkway or something?
Yes.
And would this be referred to as a T maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see back in. Sorry, I need some assistance. What I want to also go back to State's Exhibit 1 and blow it up a little different this time because I want to take in. In terms of back in February of 2012, when this is your residence, would this be the front right here of the residence?
Yes.
Okay. And is this a walkway that I'm pointing to right here with the arrow with the cursor that leads all the way and then comes down this way?
Yes.
Okay. So your house is right here at the corner?
Yes.
Okay. May I'm going to show you now another photograph. Thank you. State's Exhibit number 3. Can you tell from that photograph your residence back in February of last year? Would it have been in the corner right there?
Yes.
Okay. And is this right here? Is this your back, the side right here of your house, and then the back porch area?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of how dark or how bright it was out there that night, and I know you weren't looking outside, but would you agree that the conditions, or would you describe the conditions as this dark?
Or darker. That looks lit up to me.
Okay, that looks lit up because of the photograph, the light on the camera maybe?
Right.
Okay. State Exhibit 5, what is that? Do you recognize that photograph at all?
Yes, that's behind our house by the T intersection.
Okay. And is that the residence that would be across the courtyard or from your house? In other words, that's where the people across from you would be living?
Yes.
Okay. State Exhibit number 6, is this just, is your residence, the back of it back in February of 2012 back here
Yes.
that I'm circling, is that the porch
Yes.
or part of the porch?
Uh-huh.
Okay. State Exhibit 33, what is that?
That's the front of our house.
Okay. And I gather this, I'm going to zoom up to a part of that. Is there an address in the front of that residence?
Yes.
And the address would be 1211 Twin Trees Lane?
Yes.
I know it just says the number's 1211, right?
You're right.
Okay. And again, go back. That would be the front of the residence where you used to live back in February 2012. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And I want to go back to State's Exhibit 1. And I want to zoom in again. That would be, am I pointing to the front of the residence right here?
Yes.
And so that address is visible from the street. If somebody were walking on right here, would be able to see the residence right there, right? The number on the street, on your address. Is that correct?
I guess it depends where they're at on the
Right.
sidewalk, but yeah.
Right. I'm saying if they're walking right here, or if they're walking right here, they would be able to see, would they be able to see the address there?
I would object to the extent she's answered it. It would be asking her to speculate at this point.
Sustain.
Have you ever walked outside your residence?
Yes.
Have you ever walked towards your front of your house?
Yes.
And in fact, is there a garage in the front of the house?
There
In
is.
the house, I'm sorry, in the townhouse. Inside?
Yes.
And is there a place to park cars also?
Yes.
And is there a street there that I'm pointing to right here? I'm sorry, let me point with the cursor, right here?
Yes.
Okay. And if one were to walk this, have you ever walked before like this and been able to see the front of your residence?
Yeah, and I get where you're going with this, but there's a truck there. That's my husband's truck. So, and there's a bush by the front. So depending on where I'm at on the sidewalk would depend on if I could see that
But the numbers are visible from the sidewalk?
in certain areas of the sidewalk.
Correct. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, in the entire Retreat of Twin Lakes, there's only 3 streets, correct?
Right.
There's one that circles the whole Retreat of Twin Lakes, and then there's your street, and then there's another street, correct?
Right.
And your street, in fact, is the street that you actually go into if you're going in the front, Twin Trees, you go in right there, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, ma'am, sir, I'm sorry, ma'am, State's Exhibit 36. Do you recognize that there?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that?
The side of my house?
Okay, and is this leading into the courtyard or backyard?
Yes, and in that picture you can see what I'm saying about the bush.
Right here?
Yeah, and the numbers.
Okay. So you're saying the numbers aren't visible from the street there?
I'm saying if I was about 2 feet farther, I wouldn't be able to see the numbers.
Okay, all right. What about you? State's Exhibit 37, do you recognize that, ma'am?
Yes.
And what does that show?
The back side of my house?
Okay. And I know these are daytime photographs, correct?
Right.
Okay. State's Exhibit 39, what does that photograph show?
The back of my house?
Okay. And that would be the enclosed porch?
Yes.
Okay. And would this also show the walkway and then leading up to the front of your house, am I pointing to?
Yes.
Okay. Going back out to the street?
Right.
Okay. Ma'am, if I may approach the witness, Your Honor, and I'm sorry, I'm through with the lights. Thank you, Your Honor.
It's me.
Ma'am, I'm going to refer you back to February of last year. State's Exhibit 139. Were you living at 1211 Twin Tree Lane?
Yes.
Okay. And if I put a sticker where you lived back in February of last year, is that the correct place?
Yes.
Okay. And is this the area, in other words, where you said your husband parked and then this is a walkway this way?
Yes.
Is that what we made reference to or you talked about?
Yes.
Okay. I want to go back, ma'am, to State's Exhibit 1, and I apologize if the court may assist us. Thank you, Your Honor. Again, this is the aerial view. You recognize that in terms
Yes.
of twin? And your residence would be right here, is that correct?
Yes.
And this is Twin Tree Lane coming all the way, this would be the front entrance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if one were to come in and Retreat of Twin Lakes in the front entrance, this would be Twin Tree, would be all the way here.
I'm not sure if that front entrance is Retreat View or if
Oh.
it starts as Twin Trees. I don't
Okay,
know.
okay, but this Retreat View Circle is all the way around, am I doing this right?
Right.
This goes all the way around.
Yes.
That's just, the whole name doesn't change, it's the whole circle is Retreat View Circle, correct?
Right.
And then Twin Tree either starts right here at the front or starts right here, correct?
Right. Yes.
And it goes all the way through and goes out to the back entrance, correct?
Yes.
Is this, I apologize, is this the back entrance right here that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
Okay. Now, When you lived back in February 2012 between the Twin Lakes, you were a member of the HOA,
Yes.
Homeowners Association, correct?
Yes.
All right. And I think the 3rd Street is actually this one right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's only really 3 streets in the whole neighborhood.
Right.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm through with the lights. Thank you very much. As a result of back in February 2012, when you were living at Retreat at Twin Lakes, did you come to know a person by the name of George Zimmerman?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. And is that a result of you were a board member, I guess, of the Homeowners Association?
Yeah, and he was at a couple of the meetings.
Okay, all right. And so you had met him at a few of the neighborhood association meetings, I guess?
I never formally met him, but
You just knew him from sight?
right.
Okay. And were you aware that he was in charge of the Retreat at Twin Lakes Neighborhood Watch?
I wasn't completely aware of that. I know we were just kind of starting that program up, and I knew he was part of it, but I didn't know who was the head or.
Okay. Do you recall Mr. Zimmerman sending out some emails regarding the Neighborhood Watch?
Yes.
Okay. Now, ma'am, regarding the person or persons you heard outside yelling for help, could you identify the person or persons as one of them being George Zimmerman?
I couldn't. I didn't hear him yell like that in the meetings, so.
Okay. If I could have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
When you were there that night and you were hearing what was going on outside, did I understand you to say that the yelling stopped as soon as you heard the gunshot? Is that correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romero.
Thank you. Afternoon, Ms. Lauer.
Hi.
Yeah, if you don't mind, thanks. From reviewing your deposition, you're actually out that Sunday, right? I think at your grandfather's 92nd birthday?
Right.
And it was sort of raining the whole day?
Yes.
Right? Came back and just hung out at the apartment,
Right.
watching TV.
Yep.
And then something caught your attention, and I know you've testified to this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but something caught your attention, correct?
Yes.
And as Mr., if I might approach the witness, as Mr. Delabrianda suggested, I want to question you a few questions from where you are. I want to use this map to sort of orient you, and more particularly the jury. I'm going to put it behind you.
Okay.
Again, this is where you and your now husband, then fiance, Jeremy Weinberg, were living.
Right.
When you, and I'm going to just point to you, you're sitting somewhere in this area then, watching TV?
Yes.
Because the TV is sort of maybe here.
A little bit more over here.
Got it. TV is over here, couch and love seat.
Right.
Okay. The first thing that catches your attention, you say, is sort of, I think you said a conversation, correct?
Right, or like a loud talking.
And that was out the back and to the left?
Yes.
I think you testified in your deposition that it was sort of by the T intersection?
Yes.
Did you mean this when you were talking about the T intersection?
Yes.
That's where you first heard the noise?
Yes.
And so I think you said it was sort of three-part. I'm going to make up words. These are not the words, but somebody saying something like, I think it was a red car. No, it was a blue car. No, I told you it was a red car. Was it that type of exchange?
Yeah, shorter than that, but
Okay, and it was one person saying one thing, another person responding, and then the second person responding again?
I would imagine.
Something like that?
I don't know how many people it
And that's
was.
the first thing that caught your attention?
Yes.
Okay. And did you hear anything like, what are you following me for?
No.
Did you hear anything like, what are you talking about?
No.
But you did hear voice 1, voice 2, voice 1?
Right.
Okay. And that's the first thing that caught your attention?
Yes.
And then you said at some point, almost very quickly, you muted the TV,
Yes.
and then you heard some scuffling sounds,
Right.
almost like movement on grass or the sidewalk, right? And scuffling, you're truly talking about like
Shoes. Yeah, just like if you were playing basketball on pavement or
Right.
something, that noise that shoes make.
that? Okay. Basketball sneakers?
Or just, yeah, shoes.
Okay. And was it your testimony then that that movement or the sound seemed to move from the T intersection down almost right in front of your, or back of your townhome?
Yes.
And did it seem to you that the noise was moving in that direction?
It was moving that
It
direction.
was.
Yes.
Now at that point, were you starting the process of calling 911?
Yes.
And I think you said that that took in the neighborhood of about 30 seconds to both make the decision to call 911, grab one or two phones, and connect the call.
Right.
And of course, we heard the call. The jury can determine exactly how long the screaming was going on for. But did you get a feel, having just listened to it, that it may have lasted, let's say, 45 seconds or so?
I'm really bad with that. I would
That's
have to
okay.
just time it.
It's in evidence, and the jury can listen and time it maybe.
Right.
But in any case, that three-part exchange then became what I think you testified to, was some scuffling and then some yelps, correct?
Right.
And those yelps eventually became helps.
Yes.
And can you tell us how long those yelps or helps were going on before you connected with 911?
I couldn't tell you an exact time, but I would say there was probably a couple of yelps before it actually connected.
Okay, let's try it this way, knowing that we're talking about some inaccuracies, sort of as a premise. But if, in fact, it took you precisely 30 seconds to make the decision, to place the call, and to actually connect. So I know it may not have been 30 seconds, but from this conversation, say it was exactly 30 seconds. Can you tell us, was it half the time that there was a yelping or yelling, more than half of those 30 seconds, or less?
I couldn't tell you.
It's okay. But in fact, there was yelping or help being screamed or yelled before you connected with 911, correct?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Okay, because you've heard the 911 call, and actually the first thing on that call is a yelp or a yell for help, correct?
Right.
So you believe that it may well have been going on before the call was connected?
I believe so, because when she asked me, are they yelling for help the first time, I say I'm not sure, because I was still kind of yelping.
Okay.
And she asked me that pretty soon into the call, so.
Now, you could hear the call, the yelping and then the yells for help even better there that night than we could hear it on the phone just now, right?
Right.
It was much more current and available to you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Much more active.
Yes.
And I presume at that point, when the yelps became screams for help, that you were really paying attention?
Yes.
And you could hear it from both ears, not just from the cell phone?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like they were in our living room. It was right there.
Would you say that that was sort of a traumatic event that you, in fact, were going through at that point, listening to those screams?
Yeah, I mean, like I told him, we were multitasking and trying to answer questions and...
And it seemed, I think your testimony was, with the person who was yelling for help was in danger
Yes.
and needed help immediately.
Yes.
Did it seem, describe it. We heard it, but since you were there some 30 feet away from it, and we can only hear it because cell phone connected to a 911 call, connected to a speaker, tell us what it sounded like to you.
It just sounded like they were desperate, and whoever it was really needed help or wanted help.
And you, of course, said that you knew it was one person screaming for help, correct?
The yells for help, the voice was the same the whole time.
Okay. You never heard a second voice screaming for help, did you?
No.
Never heard a second voice screaming at all, did you?
The only other voice I heard was John Good when he came out.
Interesting, because Mr. Delaronda questioned you as to other things you didn't hear, so I'm curious. We heard what you heard, the screams for help. Oh, sorry, Your Honor. Not proper for me to say that. You heard on the call the yells for help, but we didn't hear John Good, though you did. Can you explain that?
I guess he was far enough away or quieter than the yelling.
So there were things that actually happened in that scene, such as John Good saying to those people out there, whoever it was, "What the hell are you doing?" Or
Something like
words.
that. Mm-hmm.
And that was loud enough for you to hear it?
Yes.
But Mr. Delaronda said that you didn't hear someone ask to call the police, did you?
I didn't hear anyone ask to call the police.
So whoever may have said, call the police, you just didn't hear it.
I mean, if they said it, I didn't hear it.
Okay.
Right.
And he also asked you the question, I didn't write it down, "You're going to die tonight, motherfucker." Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that.
You're not certainly testifying that it was not said, are you? You're just saying that you didn't hear it.
Right, I didn't hear it.
We talked a moment ago about what you were going through with that event that you witnessed. So, phone call ends with 911, and you're upstairs hiding, aren't you?
Yes.
But a bit of an adrenaline rush that you went through. I don't mean rush in a good way, but just that trauma event that
It
happens
was
sometimes.
surreal. We were kind of just an autopilot.
Yeah. Felt drained afterwards? Did you?
Just a mix of emotions.
When you heard the person say, "I have a gun, take my gun," and you said he said it sort of matter-of-factly, right?
Yeah.
The officer was there by then, the police officer?
I'm not sure. I don't know who they were saying that to.
Oh, okay. Did that seem to you as though the person who you now know had just shot somebody, that matter-of-fact way was some indication to you as you heard it that he just didn't care that he had just shot someone, or?
I took it just as, the police, if he was talking to police, it was, I have a gun so that they know he has a gun.
Okay. So that didn't cause you any, you didn't think, oh my God, there's somebody who, obviously the one with the gun just shot somebody and doesn't seem to care at all about the fact that he just shot him.
I would have been more concerned if they had just run off.
Okay. Let me show you, if I might, this is already in evidence. My understanding is that, I'm going to fast forward for a second and then come back and go through it slower. Well, I'll tell you what, wait on that for a second. So, everything then sort of ends, and at some point the police do come, correct? And you came down from upstairs?
Right.
Went outside and talked to some police officers?
Yes.
Okay. And actually, one of the officers came up to you, didn't they, and asked you to identify the identified person at that point as the person who had shot the other person?
We walked up to them. They were roping things off.
Okay. And one of the officers asked you to ID the guy, didn't he?
He asked if we had known either one of
Okay.
the people involved.
And he told you at one point he wanted you to identify the guy who had the gun, correct?
Right.
And what was your response?
I said I didn't want to go over and let him see me, so I wanted him to just take a picture of him and bring it over for me to look at.
And did they do that?
Yes.
And I think this is 45. This is why, in fact, we have this picture,
Right.
isn't it?
Yes.
This is the picture that Officer Wagner took at your request, right?
Yes.
And you looked at this that night on his cell phone?
Yes.
And what did you say when you first looked at it?
I said I didn't know who it was.
Because even though you knew George Zimmerman from seeing him in a few meetings, you couldn't tell?
No, he didn't look the same.
Why not?
I just didn't recognize him, and I mean, obviously, there's a lot going on there, but the woman behind me said, "Oh, that's my neighbor."
Objection, hearsay?
Now you know that's George Zimmerman, though, don't you?
Yes.
Mr. DeLoiana asked you some questions about the neighborhood, and it's still up on the screen. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
All right, I think we're okay for right now. Thank you, though, Your Honor. This is, in fact, your neighborhood, correct?
Yes.
The top middle is the main entrance, is it not?
Yes.
And if you went around, sort of retreat view circle counterclockwise till about the 9 o'clock area, that's where that green belt area is.
Yes.
What's just beyond that? Do you know? Just off the screen to the left. Is that another apartment complex?
Yes.
Being on the homeowners association, did you guys have some problems with open areas being easy areas of access for people who were not residents?
There was a lot of people that would walk through there, whether they were residents or not. I don't know if they were just.
And the homeowners association had some concerns about that, didn't they?
Yes.
Matter of fact, they ended up putting up gates and fences all along that area to the left, didn't they?
Yes.
To try and minimize the intrusion from people who didn't live there?
Yes.
It's not gonna work. If I might, yeah, I'm gonna zoom it in if I can figure out your,
Here, I can show you.
Sure, that'd be great.
What
just
part is it?
including the front.
Huh?
The front and side of her complex. No, I'm sorry, the front and side of her apartment.
Oh, you want smaller than this?
That'll work.
Is that- will that
Thanks
work?
very much, I appreciate the help. Are you oriented now to where we are?
Yes.
Okay. That truck, that I guess is your husband's truck right there in the picture?
Yes.
Where's the nearest street sign?
I guess either at the other end of that or at the beginning of that road.
Let me ask it this way. Is there a street sign anywhere near the front of where you used to live?
No.
Is there a street sign anywhere near if you would go out your front door? So now your front door, if we go past the truck and we're walking down that street, is there a street sign anywhere on that street?
No.
Is there a street sign even anywhere until you make that right-hand turn and get all the way to that corner?
It's on the corner there, yeah.
Okay. Now, if you were to take a left out of your driveway so that your husband's truck there is on your right and you come down towards the bottom, there's no street sign there either, is there?
No.
And I think you identified that though you had numbers on your house, that they were obstructed either by a bush or by Just not knowing where they were?
They're not always obstructed. I just said you couldn't see them from every angle.
And what was the lighting like that night?
It was dark.
The sidewalk, that is and by now I'm talking about the sidewalk, both the one leading from just in front of your husband's truck, back around, and then also including what we identified as a T intersection. Is that concrete?
Yes.
It's regular hard cement?
Yes.
You said that it was difficult for you to identify that screaming voice as that of George Zimmerman, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't tell whose voice that was.
Yeah. Have you ever heard George Zimmerman scream like the person was screaming that night?
Never.
Would you consider those screams to be life-threatening screams?
Yes.
Did it seem that there were the screams of somebody who was getting beat up?
They were being hurt somehow, yes.
Maybe somebody who was having this done to them?
It's possible.
Have you ever seen this picture before?
Yes.
Could those screams have come from somebody who was having this done to them?
Speculation.
Should I answer?
Oh, well, I'm thinking about it. You would need some kind of, it's speculation unless she has heard those situations before, I would guess.
Understood, Your Honor. I'll withdraw the question. In your conversations and the little interaction you have with Mr. Zimmerman, did he ever seem or come across to you to be angry,
No.
upset, what we might call a hothead?
No.
Any concerns at all that his involvement with Neighborhood Watch was unusual,
No.
inappropriate?
No.
Some type of, I want to be a vigilante, so I'm going to go start a Neighborhood Watch kind of guy?
No.
Think he was acting appropriately in his interactions with other community members?
Yeah.
You think that his involvement with Neighborhood Watch was just also to help further benefit the community?
Yes.
I might have a moment, Your Honor. Sorry, Your Honor, thank you. There was a point, I think you testified to earlier, that your then fiance, Jeremy, was going to do something to try and see what was going on outside. Can you go back over that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess his first instinct was to get the closest kind of weapon he could find and then go out the front door because he didn't just want to go out to where it seemed like it was right out our back door.
Okay, and then, so he actually did arm himself with a knife, and was it the the gunshot then stopped him from continuing that?
He never did find a knife because he doesn't know where they're at.
This is, you know this is being televised, right? So
Yes.
you just embarrassed him on national TV. Okay, but he was trying to help
Right.
and just didn't get there in time?
Well, by the time, if he had found one even, it was right around the same time that the gun went off. And
In your apartment, we talked about the porch area, having the screened enclosure, and also the shades were down as well. So you really couldn't see anything, correct?
nothing.
But you could just hear what we've now had you testify to.
Right.
And when you went upstairs, do you guys have a balcony or anything that is upstairs looking out over the scene?
Yes.
Did you ever go out on that?
No.
Did you, by the time you got upstairs, had the shot already occurred?
Yes.
Did you guys just, let me ask you this way, I guess, why didn't you look out at the scene from the balcony?
I don't know. I guess I'm smarter than that. I'm not going to go look where the gun just went off. I mean,
That's great. Thanks for the time. No further questions, Sean.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, let me refer you back to State's Exhibit Number 1. Yes, Your Honor, if we could. You see it there?
yes.
Mr. O'Mara asked you about that there is a neighborhood next to it. I'm kind of pointing in that area, that direction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did I understand you correctly to say that there was apparently a part of it that was not gated? Is that correct?
Right. There was no gate over there.
And did I understand you correctly on cross-examination to say that that was used by also residents as a cut-through? Is that correct?
Well, he said something about non-residents, but I'm sure it was used by both. I don't know.
By residents too?
I would imagine. I'm not sure though.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think I need anything else with the lights. You were asked about the sequence when you first heard something about there. And I think Mr. O'Mara asked you 1-2-1 in terms of, he mentioned red car or something, whatever the person was said. Can you say it was the same person that first said something and it was the third, or are you the exchange? Can you say one way or the other?
No, I can't.
And you could not make out who even those two persons were, assuming it was two people, correct?
Right.
In terms of whatever struggle or scuffling or whatever started, can you say where it started other than when you first heard it? You can only talk about when you first heard it, is that correct?
I can only tell you what I heard.
Right. You don't know where it started. You're not here to say it started right at the T, like you said.
Yeah, I can only tell you what I heard.
Right. And I think Mr. O'Mara asked you about the, before you actually got through to the 911 operator that you heard, I think you stated you heard a couple of helps, correct? Is that, you said two?
Yelps.
Yelps, I'm sorry, yelps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That walkway, dogway, whatever we're going to call it, concrete, that is used for, kids use that out there too, do they not?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have a dog to walk on there. Everyone uses that.
I mean, do kids play on that? It's like a sidewalk that kids, I'm assuming, play in,
Yeah.
on bicycles or on roller skates or whatever. I mean, is that used not just for people who walk dogs?
Right, for everyone.
Okay. And Mr. O'Mara asked you about the screaming. You felt, I guess, based on what you observed, that you were life-threatening, correct?
Yes.
But you don't know who was being attacked or who was not, correct?
No.
You can't say it was Mr. Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin who was screaming for help.
Yeah, we couldn't see anything.
You couldn't say it was Mr. Martin yelling for help because Mr. Zimmerman had a gun and he was yelling, help, help, help. You can't say whether it was or not.
Can't say either way.
And Your Honor, I do have a matter that I would like to proffer. We can either approach the bench, but I think it deals with a matter that was asked on cross-examination.
Okay. Up a very short matter outside your presence, so if you'll put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury room. Go right ahead. Okay, please be seated. We need to wait for paper change. Thank you. You may proceed. This is a proffer.
Ma'am, you were asked by Mr. O'Mara in terms of your knowledge of Mrs. Zimmerman, and I believe you stated that you've never seen him.
Let me object. I know it's a proffer, but I did not ask reputation, so we're very clear. I asked for personal experience, and that's a huge difference for where he's
Okay,
projecting.
I understand that, but please let me hear the rest of the question, and then I'll hear your
So he just
objection.
used the word reputation, and
Okay,
I
thank
went on autopilot.
Thank you. If you'll rephrase your question, please.
Ms. Lauer, Mr. O'Mara asked you about whether your knowledge of Mr. Zimmerman, whether you had ever seen, or whatever words you used to say, never angry, and he wasn't a hothead, and never seen him upset. Is that correct? You recall? I apologize. Never seen him upset. You recall being asked those questions?
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware that Mr. Zimmerman had before been angry and upset with a woman that he beat up, that he was his girlfriend?
I object, Your Honor. I should let him finish, I'm sorry.
Did you finish your question?
I just heard an objection, so I stopped.
Okay, well, go ahead and ask your question, and then I'll wait for the objection.
You have knowledge as to Mr. Zimmerman, the fact that he had previously had a temporary restraining order against him by a woman he lived with that he beat up?
No, we object, Your Honor, because that's a mischaracterization of evidence and testimony. And I guess she can say what she wants, but he can't argue, for example, that he's a terrorist, and she can agree. That is a mischaracterization of any evidence that they have, and I would object on that basis. It needs to be an accurate representation of what
Okay,
happened.
if you'll please rephrase your question.
Are you aware that a woman, his girlfriend at the time, got a restraining order against the defendant for the way he treated her?
Was I aware back in 2012?
I'm sorry, hold on one second. I apologize. Go ahead. Were you aware, in terms of Mr. Zimmerman's prior incident involving a restraining order that was obtained by a girl that he was dating? His
Was I
girlfriend?
aware when?
At any time?
I'm aware of it now.
Okay. Were you aware of it at the time? You testified now as to your knowledge of Mr. Zimmerman never being angry, not being a hothead, and never being upset, right now. You stated that. So my question is, are you aware that he did have a restraining order against him by a former girlfriend for violence against her?
I was under the impression he was asking if I'd ever seen him have a bad temper or be in a bad mood.
My question, ma'am, are you aware that the fact he has a restraining order, or had a restraining order against him for violence against his girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. Were you also aware that he had been arrested for a battery on a law enforcement officer at a bar?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware of the specific circumstances related to that man?
No.
Okay, you were just aware that he'd been arrested for a battery on law enforcement?
I heard it on the news before, but yeah.
Okay. Your Honor, that is, in terms of establishing a proffer, that's what I would like to be able to ask this witness. We believe, well, I don't want to make the argument that I made to the bench already.
I might respond with questions as to the proffer.
Yes, you may.
Were you aware that the domestic violence injunction was actually a mutual one? He got one against her, she got one against him. Were you aware of that?
I did hear that, yes.
Okay, and that they were both dismissed?
I don't believe I heard that.
Okay. And were you aware that in the case where he was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer for going to the aid of an underage buddy of his who was sort of accosted by ATF agents, that case was dropped to a misdemeanor? Were you aware of that?
I didn't know the specifics.
Okay. And having been dropped to a misdemeanor, it then went into pretrial diversion program. Were you aware of that?
No.
And then having gone successfully through the pretrial diversion program, that the charges were completely dismissed back in, I think it was 2005. Were you aware of that?
No.
Nothing further.
Thank you. We're going to have argument. Go ahead.
Yes,
You have more questions?
I was just going to ask that this witness just remain subject to recall regarding this subject matter, and I'd like to be able to present case law and argument to the court, and I can even provide more specifics about both of those incidents. That's why I asked to proffer it, so that obviously it's done in front of the jury, our position, but I don't want to make the whole argument here, but our position is that...
Do you not want to make the argument now and have the witness remain for recall, or...
In fairness to the court, since I know that I wasn't expecting it, I want to be able to provide the case law to the court, and I don't want to hold
Well,
up
I'm sure the
matters.
defense wants to be able to do so also. So we can release Ms. Lauer for now, subject to being recalled?
I do have one other matter. Yes, Your Honor, I would like to have one other matter, and I don't want to also, this matter does not deal with the subject matter we're talking about. I want to be able to ask her outside the presence of the jury.
You may proffer
Okay.
again.
Ma'am, do you by chance, in terms of do you follow Mr. Zimmerman's brother on Twitter?
No.
Have you ever responded to any of his tweets or twits or whatever they call those things?
Let me object on grounds of relevancy.
Well, it's,
even within a proffer. I think they just can't. My objection is on grounds of relevancy.
overruled.
You've never followed him on Twitter or tweet or anything?
Not
like
that I know of. I hardly.
How about on Facebook?
I don't believe so.
The reason I ask is because, and I can, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
May I see?
And I'll be glad to show it to you. This way.
Can counsel approach for just one moment?
Ms. Lauer, I'm showing you your Facebook. You recognize it there? I'm sorry, Twitter, but I thought it was, okay. And it shows you that, let me just show you the front, or the top of it, I should say, if I can get to it. You recognize that as
Yes.
your Twitter?
Yes.
Okay. And you recognize one of the people that you're following is Robert Zimmerman Jr., Mr. Zimmerman's brother right here?
I see it says that, but if you know anything about me and Twitter, I hardly know how to use that.
So how did this Robert Zimmerman Jr. get on your Twitter account?
I would imagine I've probably gone on, and I've been very careful to not talk with any media, pick sides on anything. So if I went on his page and accidentally hit follow, that's a possibility. But
Before we move on from that,
it doesn't make sense that I would be so staying out of the media and everything and do something like that. That doesn't make.
Your belief is that this was just inadvertent?
Honestly, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. I don't know who half of those people are.
Do you know how they got on your Twitter?
It says follow. It doesn't say following.
So what does that mean?
It means if I want to follow them, I would click that.
Right, but there's limited people that are on here, but this is your account. You acknowledge that, right?
Yeah, but I don't acknowledge that I clicked to follow them. It's asking me to do it now.
Do you have any idea of how that got on here?
I'm sorry. No.
I apologize. Do you have any idea how that got on there?
No, I don't know how half of those got on there.
Okay. And I think you also, on your Facebook, you have as a friend Frank Taffy too, is that correct?
I'm sorry. On your Facebook, you have as a friend.
I'm sorry, Ms. Flower, we're trying not to.
Oh,
I apologize, Madam Court Reporter. On your Facebook, do you also have Frank Taffy as a friend?
yes, he friend requested me. He's a neighbor.
Okay. Not because he's good friends or a supporter of George Zimmerman.
Not at all.
Is your testimony that you are not supporting either side in this case, is that correct?
That's my testimony.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions while we have that here. If I might.
I apologize, you need to get on the record.
Would you just announce for the court how many tweets that you have performed on the entirety of your experience on Twitter as a entity?
0.
Okay. Nothing further.
I don't know how to use this.
So you just have 112 following, is that correct?
They're following me.
Oh, they're following you. Robert Zimmerman Jr. is following you?
That's what that means, following, right?
And you've got 36 that are followers. What does that mean?
I don't know what those mean.
Okay.
Honestly, you tell me.
I'm not a Twitter person either.
Yes, you may.
But Ms. Flower, would it be fair to say that those things just don't appear on your Twitter, do they?
That's not fair for me to say. I don't know how that works.
So you just have a Twitter account, but you don't know how it works?
Exactly.
Okay.
I hardly use it. Try to see the last time I logged in.
Okay. Do you believe at some point you were friends with Robert Zimmerman Jr. or even?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
I don't think I would have done that. That doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Do you think maybe it was he got on there on his own, or maybe George Zimmerman? Were you ever friends with George Zimmerman?
No, I never was.
Okay. I have nothing else regarding the proffer.
Okay, anything else regarding this proffer?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lauer, we're going to have you excused, but subject to being recalled. So that means that you're still under the court subpoena. The rule of sequestration for witnesses has been invoked, so that means you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody until this case is completed. And if called back to the courtroom, you must appear. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You'll be excused. State have another witness available?
Yes.
Okay, let's get the jury back in, and then we'll have you call your next witness. Or does counsel need a break? The jury's been back there having a break. Do you need a short break? Why don't we take a 15, till 4:30 recess.
Judge, I will tell you that the next witness has a Spanish interpreter, so the court will need that instruction ready. I
Okay.
think it's 90.606.
You don't have jury instructions with you. I'll have to go print it out. Thank you. Be seated. Sarah. Ready to call your next witness? So we're ready for the jury? Defense ready for the jury to come in?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Okay, come on in. Does anybody have that jury instruct? Let's see. I'll have to pull it up on the computer. I don't have it. No. Oh, okay.
Jury's present, Your Honor.
Okay, please be seated. Mr. Guy, if you'll call your next witness, please.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Can I have
I
the
do.
interpreter raise your right hand, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will well and truly translate these proceedings from English to Spanish and Spanish to English to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, and you taking a seat.
Pasa por acá.
And before we get started, we'll need you, sir, to give your name for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Name is Jaime, Jaime, Sotomayor, Sotomayor.
Okay, thank. I'm sorry, what? He spelled his name. It's Jaime Sotomayor.
Mayor.
Mayor. And ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear testimony of a witness who will be testifying in Spanish. This witness will testify through the official court reporter interpreter. Although some of you may know Spanish, it is important that all jurors consider the same evidence. Therefore, you must accept the English translation of the witness's testimony. You must disregard any different meaning. If, however, during the testimony there is a question as to the accuracy of the English interpretation, you should bring this matter to my attention immediately by raising your hand. You should not ask your question or make any comment about the interpretation in the presence of the other jurors or otherwise share your question or concern with any of them. I will take steps to see if your question can be answered and any discrepancy resolved. If, however, after such efforts, a discrepancy remains, I emphasize that you must rely only upon the official English interpretation as provided by the court interpreter and disregard any contrary interpretation. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you'd please tell the members of the jury your name.
Buenas tardes, señora. Por favor, ¿le puede dar el nombre suyo completo a los miembros del jurado?
Selma Mora.
Selma Mora.
In what city do you currently live?
¿En qué ciudad vive actualmente?
Miami.
Miami.
Could you spell your last name for us?
¿Nos puede deletrear el apellido?
M-O-R-A.
M-O-R-A.
Thank you. Are you employed?
¿Usted tiene empleo?
Sí.
Yes.
And what type of work do you do?
¿Qué tipo de trabajo hace usted?
Construcción.
Construction.
Specifically, what do you do within the field of construction?
Específicamente, ¿qué es lo que hace usted en el campo de la construcción?
Ventas de equipos para la construcción.
I sell equipment for construction work.
And approximately how long have you been in that type of work?
¿Y aproximadamente cuánto tiempo lleva usted en ese tipo de trabajo?
Un total de 9 años.
for a total of 9 years.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
¿Usted es ciudadana americana?
Sí.
Yes.
And where are you from originally?
¿Originalmente de dónde es?
Colombia.
Colombia.
How long have you been in the United States?
¿Cuánto tiempo lleva usted en los Estados Unidos?
12 años.
12 years.
Do you speak English?
¿Y usted habla inglés?
No.
Yes, a little.
Do you feel more comfortable with the interpreter?
Pero se siente más cómodo usando intérprete.
Definitivamente en este caso.
Most definitely in this case.
All right. Tell the members of the jury, please, what is your educational background?
Por favor, ¿le puede explicar a los miembros del jurado cuál es su trasfondo educacional?
Soy arquitecto y diseñador interior.
I am an architect and an interior designer.
And where did you receive your degrees?
¿Y de dónde recibió usted sus grados?
Los he recibido en Colombia, los originales, y tengo estudios también hechos aquí en los Estados Unidos.
I received them originally from Colombia, but I also have continued courses here in the United States.
And let me turn your attention to February of 2012. Where did you live at that time? What was the name of your community?
Vamos a traer su atención entonces a la fecha de febrero del 2012. ¿Dónde residía usted? ¿Cómo se llamaba la comunidad donde usted vivía?
Twin Lakes.
Twin Lakes.
And what was your street address?
¿Y cuál era la dirección de la calle?
2831 Retreat View Circle.
2831?
Retreat View.
Retreat View. 2831 Retreat View Circle.
And when did you move into that address?
¿Cuándo fue que usted se mudó a esa dirección?
En el 2007.
In 2007.
In February of 2012, did anyone else live at your address with you?
Para febrero del 2012, ¿alguien más vivía con usted en esa dirección?
Sí.
Yes.
And who was that?
¿Quién era esa persona?
Bueno, mis hijos y mi amiga Mary Catcher con su hija.
My children and a friend, a female friend, her name is Mary
Mary Catcher.
Catcher.
How many children did you have?
¿Cuántos hijos tiene usted?
2.
2.
And what were your children's ages in February of 2012?
Para febrero del 2012, ¿qué edades tenían los niños?
9 y 14 años.
9 and 14 years old.
And was Mary Kuchar a friend of yours?
¿Y Mary Kutcher era amiga de usted?
Sí.
Yes.
And how old was Mary Kuchar's daughter in February 2012?
¿Qué edad tenía la hija de Mary Kutcher en febrero del 2012?
8 años.
8 years old.
You want me to approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Let me show you what's been marked as case 139 and ask you, just get back here. Let me ask you to stand over here if you can. Just do you recognize your address on that diagram?
Déjeme preguntarle, mostrarle este documento que se ha marcado como pieza de evidencia. ¿Usted reconoce en este diagrama la dirección donde usted vivía?
Sí.
Yes.
Is it marked correctly at 2831?
¿Está marcado correctamente con el 2831?
Sí.
Yes.
Specifically then, let me turn your attention to the evening of February 26th, 2012. Were you at home that evening?
Específicamente voy a traer su atención a la tarde, temprano en la noche del 26 de febrero del 2012. ¿Usted se encontraba en su hogar?
Sí.
Yes.
And was anyone else at home that evening?
¿Esa noche había alguien más en el hogar?
Mary.
Mary.
Were either of your children or Miss Kuchar's daughter at home that evening?
¿Alguno de los hijos de usted o la hija de la señora Kutcher estaba esa noche en el hogar?
No.
No.
Where were the children?
¿Dónde estaban los niños?
Los míos con su papá.
Mine were with their father.
Y
Do you recall where Mary Kuchar's daughter was?
¿Recuerda dónde estaba la hija de Mary?
hay que usar la calle donde mi stepdaughter.
Well, she was across the street at the, I don't know how to say it.
La hija mayor de mi ex marido.
She was with the eldest daughter of my former husband.
All right. Do you recall that weather that evening?
¿Usted recuerda cómo estaba el clima esa noche?
Sí.
Yes.
And what was that?
¿Cómo estaba?
Lluvioso y oscuro.
It was rainy and dark.
At some point that evening, did you hear any sounds coming from behind your townhome?
¿En algún momento de esa noche usted escuchó algún ruido que provenía de la parte trasera del hogar?
Sí.
Yes.
And what did you hear?
¿Qué fue lo que escuchó?
Un lloriqueo.
Like a crying.
And where were you when you heard that sound?
¿Y dónde estaba usted cuando escuchó ese sonido?
En la cocina.
In the kitchen.
And is your kitchen, was that in the back of your townhome?
Y la cocina queda en la parte trasera del apartamento.
Correcto.
Yes, that's correct.
And by back, do you mean back towards the dog walk?
Y por la parte trasera, ¿usted quiere decir la parte que queda hacia donde caminan los perros?
Sí.
Yes.
Did your kitchen have a window?
¿La cocina suya tenía una ventana?
Sí.
Yes.
And was the kitchen window open or closed that evening?
Esa noche usted tenía la ventana de la cocina abierta o cerrada.
Estaba abierto hasta la mitad.
Perdón.
Estaba abierto hasta la mitad.
It was open halfway.
Was there any other background noise in your kitchen at the time you heard the crying sound?
Al momento que usted oyó este sonido de como lloriqueo, ¿había algún ruido en la cocina, en el trasfondo?
No.
No.
Can you describe for the jury what the crying sound sounded like to you?
¿Usted le puede describir al jurado cómo le sonó a usted ese sonido del lloriqueo?
Era como en 2, 3 oportunidades como
It was like a
Could you tell whether or not the crying sound was coming from an adult or a child?
¿Usted pudo distinguir si ese sonido?
Speculation.
Sustained.
Was the crying sound, how was it soft or was it hard or what?
Ese sonido del lloriqueo era suave, bajo, era alto, ¿cómo era?
suave.
It was soft, low.
Could you make out any specific words that were being said?
¿Usted pudo distinguir alguna palabra en específico que se estuviera hablando?
No.
No.
When you heard the crying, did you look out your kitchen window?
Cuando usted oyó este llanto, el lloriqueo, ¿usted miró por la ventana de la cocina?
Sí.
Yes.
Could you see anything outside when you looked out your kitchen window?
¿Usted pudo ver algo hacia afuera cuando miró por la ventana de la cocina?
Estaba muy oscuro, no pude ver nada.
It was too dark, I was not able to see anything.
After you heard the crying sounds, did you hear any other sound that caught your attention?
Después de oír este sonido de llanto, de lloriqueo, ¿usted pudo escuchar algo más que le llamara la atención?
Sí.
Yes.
And what was that?
¿Qué fue eso?
Un sonido seco que lo describo como si fuera como un scooter o algún elemento de un niño que se hubiera caído.
It was like a dry sound, which I have described as, like the thump of a child falling, is what I have called it.
Como un longboard. Lo que tienen niños saben que ellos al brincar, cuando lo botan, suena de una manera seca y fuerte.
Okay.
Longboard.
Longboard. It's like a longboard, those of you who have children, you know that when you bounce on it, it sounds like this dry thump. It's strong.
Did you think it was a gunshot when you heard it?
¿Usted pensó que era un disparo cuando lo escuchó?
No.
No.
Did you hear any of the crying sounds after you heard that sound?
Después de haber escuchado este sonido que usted describe, ¿oyó más del llanto?
No.
No.
And what did you do when you heard the sound that we're discussing?
¿Y qué hizo usted cuando escuchó este sonido que estamos mencionando ahora?
Corrí hacia la parte de atrás por donde queda el porch.
I ran towards the back where the porch is located.
Did you go outside?
¿Usted salió afuera?
Sí, hasta donde un screen que tengo
Yes, as far as a screen that I have.
me lo permitió llegar.
That's as far as it allowed me to go.
All right. And describe for the jury how your back porch was screened in. Was it screened in from the floor to the ceiling, or was it a half wall, or what?
Y la terraza suya del patio, ¿cómo es que usted la tiene con el screen, la tela metálica? ¿La tiene desde el piso hasta el techo o a mitad o cómo lo tiene?
Es hasta más o menos la mitad.
I would say it's more or less
Gracias.
about halfway, about waist high.
And what was the purpose of that screen?
¿Y cuál es el propósito de esa pantalla?
Para que el perrito de mi hija se pudiera salir.
Well, in order to avoid my daughter's little dog from going out.
All right. So your daughter had a dog at the time?
Entonces, ¿su hija tenía un perrito?
Sí.
Yes.
Did the screen on your porch, did it outline the outside of the porch?
Esta pantalla que había en la terraza posterior era el mismo contorno de la terraza completa?
Sí.
Yes.
Let me ask you, if the sound that you heard, if you thought it was a gunshot, would you have run outside?
Déjeme preguntarle, si usted hubiera pensado que el sonido que usted escuchó era un disparo, ¿usted hubiera corrido hacia afuera?
Nunca.
No?
Nunca.
No, not at all.
When you got outside, was the crying sound that you heard coming from your right or your left?
Cuando usted corrió hacia afuera, el llanto que usted había escuchado, ¿venía de la derecha o de la izquierda suya?
De mi derecha.
From my...
Just to clarify, I think the timing of the sounds that she just testified to, I would ask for clarification.
Okay, if you'll please clarify.
Yes. The sounds that you heard originally in your kitchen, as you're facing the back of your residence in your kitchen, were those sounds coming from your right or your left?
El ruido, el sonido que usted escuchó originalmente desde la cocina, cuando usted está mirando desde la cocina hacia la parte posterior de la casa, ¿le quedaba ese ruido hacia la derecha o hacia la izquierda?
Derecha.
To my right.
And when you got outside, did you look in that direction? That is to your right.
Y cuando usted salió al exterior, usted miró hacia esa dirección, hacia la derecha.
Correcto.
That's correct.
Did you see any people when you looked to your right?
¿Usted vio alguna persona, vio gente cuando miró hacia la derecha?
Sí.
Yes.
How many?
¿Cuántas?
Dos.
Two.
You know, I may approach again? Let me show you states 139 again.
Déjeme volver a mostrar la pieza de evidencia 139.
And 2831 is your residence?
Y la 2831 es la casa suya, ¿verdad?
Does this figure right here, is that the approximate location of where you saw the two people when you got outside and looked to the right?
Esta marca que vemos aquí es el lugar aproximado donde usted vio a las dos personas cuando usted salió al exterior a mirar hacia allá?
Sí.
Yes.
And the porch you were looking at would have been back here?
¿Y la terraza donde usted estaba mirando sería por acá?
Sí.
Yes.
For the record, Judge, I indicated the porch at 2831.
Record will so reflect.
Yara, could you dim the lights for one moment? Ms. Moore, if I count 1, 2, 3, is this the approximate location of your residence?
Si yo cuento 1, 2, 3, la cuarta sería aproximadamente el local donde queda la residencia suya?
Sí.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you got outside on your back porch, did you hear any more of the crying?
Cuando usted salió a la terraza posterior, ¿usted oyó algo más de ese llanto?
No.
No.
How were the two people positioned that you saw?
¿Cómo estaban ubicadas las dos personas que usted vio?
Había uno en el suelo.
One of them was on the ground,
Y el otro estaba encima en una posición encaballada.
and the other one was on top in a position like a rider,
Like riding a horse
como si estuviera montado en un caballo.
Sí.
Yes.
with one leg on each side?
Con una pierna en cada lado.
Sí.
Yes.
The person on top, could you tell if that was a man or a woman?
La persona que estaba arriba, ¿usted podía distinguir si era hombre o mujer?
No en ese momento.
Not at that point in time.
And in what direction was the person on top facing relative to you?
¿Y en qué dirección quedaba mirando la persona que estaba arriba desde el punto de vista suyo?
Él está mirando hacia donde está los botes de basura.
He was facing towards where the trash receptacles are located.
May I approach you? And by trash receptacle, do you mean the dog waste receptacle?
Y por bote de basura tú quieres decir donde se ponen los desperdicios del perro.
Sí.
Yes.
All right. So they're facing in this direction.
O sea que estaban mirando en esa dirección.
Correcto.
That's correct. No te pegues tanto de distorsión.
Could you tell whether the person on type was white, black, Hispanic, or what?
¿Usted podía distinguir si la persona que estaba arriba era blanco, negro, hispano o algo?
La poca luz que había en ese momento no me permitía mirar mucho los colores.
What little light there was at that time did not allow me to see very well what color.
Could you see anything about the clothing of the person on top?
¿Usted podía distinguir algo sobre la vestimenta de la persona que estaba arriba?
Lo único que puedo decir es que tenía algunos patrones entre negro y rojo.
The only thing that I could say is that it was some sort of a pattern between blacks and reds.
And where were the hands of the person who was on top when you got outside?
¿Y dónde tenía las manos la persona que estaba arriba cuando usted salió?
En ese momento no podría decirlo, pero tenía que tener, o sea, sus brazos estaban apoyados sobre alguna parte de esta persona que estaba en el suelo.
Well, at that point in time, I couldn't really tell, but he must have been supported on some part of the person who was laying on the ground.
La parte que yo podía observar era su costado.
Because the part that I was
derecho.
able to observe was mostly his right hand side.
And what do you mean he was able to support himself? What do you mean by that?
¿Y qué quiere decir usted que él estaba apoyado? ¿Qué quiere decir?
Porque estaba casi que en la misma posición, agachada.
Because he was
sobre el
almost
otro
in
cuerpo.
the same position, you know, like stooping over, like the person who was on the ground.
Did you hear the person on top say anything at that time?
¿Usted escuchó a la persona que estaba encima decir algo en ese momento?
No.
No.
The person on the bottom, how were they positioned?
La persona que estaba abajo, ¿cómo estaba ubicada?
En ese momento no lo podría describir.
At that point in time, I couldn't describe it.
All right. Was the person laying down?
Pero la persona estaba acostada?
Sí.
Yes.
Could you tell if the person on the bottom was a man or a woman?
¿Usted pudo distinguir si la persona que estaba abajo era hombre o mujer?
No.
No.
Could you tell if the person on the bottom at that time was on their back or their stomach?
¿Usted pudo distinguir si la persona en esos momentos, la que estaba abajo, estaba de espalda o estaba de lado?
No.
No.
Did you see any movement from the person on the bottom?
¿Usted vio algún movimiento de la persona que estaba abajo?
Sí.
Yes.
And what was that?
¿Cuál fue?
Un poco sus piernas. Un pequeño pateo.
A little bit of a leg movement, like a shudder.
Did you say anything to the two people when you went outside?
Cuando usted salió al exterior, ¿le dijo algo a esas dos personas?
Sí.
Yes.
What did you say?
¿Qué dijo?
¿Qué está sucediendo?
What's going on?
Did you say it loud enough so those two people could hear you?
¿Lo dijo suficientemente alto como para que esas dos personas la pudieran oír?
Sí.
Yes.
And did you talk to them in English or Spanish?
¿Y lo dijo en español o en inglés?
En inglés.
En English.
Can you say for us in English what's going on or what are you doing?
¿No podría decir qué palabras usó?
What's going on?
Did the person on the bottom respond in any way when you said that?
¿La persona que estaba abajo respondió en alguna forma cuando usted dijo eso?
Nadie respondió.
Nobody answered.
Did the person on top respond in any way?
¿La persona que estaba arriba tampoco respondió?
Solo me volteó a mirar, pero no hubo respuesta.
The only thing was that he turned to look, but I don't remember anything else.
No.
Perdón.
Lo que dije fue que me volteó a mirar, pero no hubo respuesta.
Ok. ¿Tú te volteaste a mirar?
Él me volteó a mirar a mí,
Él se
pero
volteó a
no
mirar.
respondió.
The problem is that in Spanish the pronouns are sometimes omitted, so the person turned around to look, but did not respond, did not issue a response.
All right, and are you talking about the person on top now?
Y tú estás hablando de la persona que estaba arriba en ese momento.
Sí.
Yes.
Did you say anything to the person on top when they turned and looked at you?
¿Tú le dijiste algo a la persona que estaba arriba cuando se volteó y te miró?
Volví a preguntar, ¿qué pasa?
I asked again what's going on.
And did that person answer you the second time you asked?
¿Y es la segunda vez que preguntaste, esa persona te contestó?
No.
No.
Did you ask again what's going on?
¿Tú volviste a preguntar what's going on?
Sí.
Yes.
And did anybody respond to you that time?
¿Y en esa ocasión alguien te respondió?
Sí,
Yes.
And who responded to you?
¿Quién te respondió?
la persona que estaba arriba.
The person who was on top.
And what did the person on top say?
¿Y qué dijo la persona que estaba arriba?
Solamente llamé a la policía.
Just to call the police.
Did you ever hear the person on the bottom say anything?
¿En algún momento escuchaste a la persona que estaba abajo decir algo?
No,
No.
At any point, did you see either the person on top or the person on the bottom get up?
¿En algún momento tuviste a la persona que estaba arriba o la persona que estaba abajo levantarse?
sí,
Yes.
Who did you see get up?
¿A quién viste tú levantarse?
el que estaba arriba.
The one who was on top.
And what did the person on top do when they got up?
¿Y qué hizo la persona que estaba arriba cuando se levantó?
Caminó, dio unos pequeños pasos de donde estaba el cuerpo
He walked, he took a few steps from where the body was
en dirección hacia el basurero de los perros.
in the direction towards the dog, the rubbish receptacle.
All right. Could you see whether or not the person who was up right now, who had been on top, could you see whether or not at that point there was a man or a woman?
En esos momentos tú pudiste ver, una vez que la persona ya estaba levantada, la persona que había estado encima, ¿pudiste distinguir si era hombre o mujer?
Sí,
Yes.
And what was it?
¿Qué era?
hombre.
A man.
And what did the man do after he got up and started walking towards the dog waste receptacle?
¿Y qué hizo esta persona una vez se levantó y caminó hacia el bote de la basura del perro?
Caminó unos cuantos pasos.
He walked for a few steps.
Regresó. Mientras hacía este recorrido, tocaba su cabeza
And
con
he-
una mano.
He walked towards the receptacles, then he walked back, and while he was doing this pacing, he would put his hands up on his head
Una
once,
mano, la
One
otra la
hand.
tenía en su cadera, ¿no?
and he had the other hand on his waist.
All right. Can you stand up for us and just place your hands how the man had his hands when he was walking around?
Tú puedes, por favor, entonces ponerte de pie y poner las manos en la posición en que la tenía el hombre según iba caminando.
Así.
Like this.
All right. And Judge, for the record, her right hand was on her head and her left hand was on her left hip. Miss Moore, when the man was upright and walking back and forth, did he appear to be having any trouble walking?
Señora Mora, cuando el hombre estaba ya parado y caminando hacia adelante y hacia atrás, ¿aparentaba tener alguna dificultad en caminar?
No,
No.
Did you ever see the man stumble or stagger when he was upright walking around?
¿En algún momento viste al hombre tropezarse o tambalearse según estaba caminando?
no,
No.
Did you hear the man who was walking around say anything when he was walking around?
¿Tú escuchaste a este hombre que estaba caminando decir algo mientras caminaba?
no.
No.
When the man on top got up and started walking around, could you see the man on the bottom or the person on the bottom better?
Cuando esta persona se levantó y estaba caminando, ¿tú pudiste ver a la persona, el hombre o la persona que estaba abajo, lo pudiste ver mejor?
Sí,
Yes.
Could you tell at that point whether or not the person on the bottom was on their stomach or their back?
Y en ese momento, ¿pudiste distinguir si la persona que estaba abajo estaba boca abajo o boca arriba?
estaba boca abajo.
He was face down.
And after the man on top got up and was walking around, did you ever see someone out there with a flashlight?
Y después de que este hombre que estaba arriba estaba parado y caminando, ¿tú pudiste ver a alguien por allí con una linterna?
Sí,
Yes.
And what did you do when you saw someone else out there with a flashlight?
¿Y qué hiciste tú cuando viste que había otra persona allá afuera con una antorcha de mano, una linterna?
en ese momento, por mi amiga que estaba gritando desde la parte de atrás, había sido una bala.
Well, at that moment, because of my female friend who was screaming behind me that it had been a gunshot,
Ya quise entrar a mi casa, pero antes
I felt like going back inside the house, but before that,
una de las vecinas del lado del frente iba saliendo
one of the female neighbors from across was coming out.
Y le grité que se devolviera, que aparentemente eran tiros.
And I screamed at her to go back because apparently there was shooting.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach?
Show this one more time. Ms. Moore, if you would show the members of the jury, please, approximately where the female was that you saw step outside.
¿Le puede explicar aproximadamente a los miembros del jurado dónde fue que usted vio a la señora que dice que salió?
Del 1251.
From 1251.
All right. And at that point, you turned around and ran inside?
Y en ese momento usted se volteó y corrió hacia adentro.
Sí.
Yes.
And I believe you said that your female friend said that was a gunshot. Were you speaking about Mary Kuchar?
Y me parece que usted mencionó que su amiga dijo que había sido un disparo. Eso, usted se refiere a Mary Kuchar.
Correcto.
That's correct.
And what was Mary Kuchar doing when you got back inside?
¿Y qué estaba haciendo Mary Kuchar cuando usted se regresó adentro?
Estaba el teléfono en el área de la sala comedor, que es justo
She was on
en
the
el
phone
primer piso.
in the area of the living room, dining room. You know, it's one area.
And do you know who Mary Kuchar was talking to on the phone when you got back inside?
¿Y usted sabe con quién estaba hablando Mary Kuchar cuando usted se regresó adentro?
¿Con el 911?
911.
Did you and Miss Kuchar stay at your residence that evening?
¿Usted y la señora Kuchar se quedaron en la residencia esa noche?
Sí.
Yes.
And did the police come to your residence that evening?
¿Y esa noche la policía vino a la casa?
En la parte de atrás estaban cerrándolo y un policía, ella era la que más estaba hablando con el agente.
Well, they had closed up the back area of the houses, and there was a police officer, and she did most of the speaking with the police officers.
And when you say she, are you referring to Mary Kuchar?
Y cuando usted dice ella, se refiere a Mary Kuchar.
Correcto.
Correct.
At some point, did you speak with the Sanford Police Department in this case?
Pero en algún momento usted habló con miembros de la policía del departamento de policía de Sanford en este caso.
No esa noche,
Not that night.
pero el agente nos entregó un documento, un
But
papel,
an agent gave us a document, a piece of paper,
en el cual nos solicitaba que si queríamos escribir algo, lo hiciéramos en ese papel y lo
which
devolviéramos.
requested that if we wanted to write something down, we should do so on that piece of paper.
And what did you do in terms of writing something down? Did you write out a statement, or did you have Ms. Kuchar write out a statement, or what?
¿Y qué hizo usted? Usted, en cuanto a esto de poner algo por escrito, ¿usted preparó una declaración por escrito? ¿Le pidió a Mary Kuchar que preparara la declaración por escrito? ¿Qué hicieron?
Mary lo hizo porque yo estaba más ahí tratando de comunicarme con mi ex esposo
Well, Mary
para
did
que
so
no me trajera los niños en ese momento.
because I was trying to contact my former husband so that he would not be bringing the children back home at that point in time.
All right. And at some point, did you speak with the police in person?
¿Y en algún momento usted habló con la policía en persona?
Fue tal vez como unos 4 días después, tal vez.
That may have been about 4 days later, maybe.
And did you tell the police what you had seen and heard that evening?
Y usted le dijo a la policía lo que usted había visto y había escuchado esa noche.
Sí.
Yeah.
Miss Moore, had you ever met a young man named Trayvon Martin?
¿Usted alguna vez conoció a un joven de nombre Trayvon Martin?
Nunca.
Never.
To your knowledge, had you ever met a man named George Zimmerman?
¿Que usted tuviera conocimiento, en algún momento conoció a un hombre de nombre George Zimmerman?
No, nunca.
No, never.
And had you lived in that same unit continuously since 2007?
¿Y usted había estado viviendo en esa misma unidad continuamente desde el 2007?
Sí.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Bara, Ross?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
That night that we're talking about, you were in the kitchen cooking?
Esa noche de la que estamos hablando, ¿usted estaba en la cocina cocinando?
No.
No.
What were you doing?
¿Qué hacía?
Estaba alistando para preparar un café.
¿Un café? I was getting ready to prepare some coffee.
Okay. Were you doing that in a location in the kitchen so that you were facing the back window?
¿Y usted estaba haciendo eso en un lugar de la cocina que quedaba mirando hacia la ventana de la cocina?
Mi cafetera estaba ubicada
De tal manera
de que la ventana estaba a mi derecha.
Well, the coffee maker was located in such a position that the window was on my right-hand side.
Right-hand side. So, for my purposes, this is the window.
Así que para propósitos de él, la ventana le queda aquí
Coffee machine over here.
y la cafetera está allá.
Sí,
Yes.
And that's what you're working on?
Y ahí era que usted estaba trabajando.
sí.
Yes.
The first thing you heard was what you identified as cries.
Lo primero que usted escuchó, lo que usted identificó como un lloriqueo, como un llanto.
Sí.
Yes.
May I approach the witness for a moment, Your Honor? We're going to use this again. This is your apartment, correct?
Este es el apartamento suyo, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
Sí.
This is your porch area?
Y este es el área de la terraza.
Correcto.
Correct.
I see right there a little L-shaped. That's a column, correct?
Y yo veo que aquí hay una columna, una forma de L que hay una columna, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
And we'll get to this in a moment, but you actually reached out over that column to see what you saw later,
Y
correct?
vamos a entrar en más detalles más adelante, pero usted tuvo que
Later.
sobresalirse por encima de esta columna para poder ver lo que estaba pasando más adelante, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
This is the kitchen area,
Este
right
es el área de
here?
la cocina aquí, ¿verdad? Correct.
And the window sort of in the center.
Y la ventana queda como en el centro.
Sí.
Yes.
Bushes, the bushes were here?
¿Hay arbustos ahí afuera?
Sí, bajitos.
Yes, low.
And there's bushes everywhere here, correct?
Y aquí hay arbustos por todos estos lugares, ¿verdad?
Correcto.
Correct.
Okay. Low, this high?
Bajito
Sí.
como así,
About 3 feet high?
como de 3 pies.
Correcto.
Correct.
With what you heard, you didn't see anything the first time, correct?
Con lo que usted
Correcto.
escuchó no vio nada en ese momento por primera vez, ¿verdad?
And what you heard,
I'm sorry.
Correcto,
Yes.
sí.
Correct.
did I not wait? Sorry. And what you heard came from this area,
Y lo que
correct?
usted escuchó vino de esta área.
Definitivo.
Could you
Sorry.
tell, could,
No te pude escuchar. Could you repeat?
Definitivo, sí.
Definitely.
could you tell how far down the noise came from?
¿Tú pudiste determinar como a qué distancia venía ese ruido?
Son sonidos y no podría predeterminar distancias.
It was just sounds. I was not able to predetermine a distance.
Además, porque no era algo a lo cual estuviera prestando atención, simplemente llegaron
In addition to
en
the
el
fact that it
momento
wasn't
que yo estaba en la
something
cocina.
that I wasn't paying attention to, it was simply something that reached me while I was working in the kitchen.
Could have been from this area right here, correct?
Pero pudo haber sido de esta área de acá, ¿correcto?
Correcto.
Correct.
Could have been from this area here, correct?
Y pudo haber sido de esta área más arriba, ¿verdad?
De mi casa para arriba, cualquier punto.
From my house upward in that direction, anywhere.
Thank you. You only heard 2 screams though, correct?
Y tú solamente escuchaste como 2 gritos, ¿verdad?
And I'm sorry, I said screams, you said 2 cries,
Y
correct?
perdóname porque dije gritos, pero tú dijiste que era un llanto.
El sonido que describo como un llanto, sí.
The sound that I have described as a cry, yes.
2.
2.
Sí.
Yes.
You've listened, since that day, you've listened to the 911 calls that have the screams on it, correct?
Luego de esa fecha, tú has escuchado una llamada al 911 donde se oye unos llantos, ¿verdad?
Por supuesto.
Of course.
Did any of those screams on the 911 call now to you sound as though they may have been 2 of the cries that you heard?
¿Alguno de esos gritos que se escuchan en esa llamada al 911 ahora te suena como los llantos que tú escuchaste esa noche?
Podría ser.
It could be.
Okay. On that 911 call that you did listen to, you didn't hear your voice at all, did you?
En esa llamada del 911 que tú escuchaste, no escuchaste la voz tuya en absoluto, ¿verdad?
No es algo que le estuviera prestando mucha atención, la verdad.
Well, it wasn't
Pero
something
no
that I was
nunca.
really paying much attention to, you know?
Pero no nunca.
No, but I never did.
Okay. I'm curious because you said that you yelled to a neighbor across the courtyard.
Me está curioso porque tú mencionaste que tú le gritaste a una vecina que queda al otro lado de este patio.
Correcto.
That's correct.
You didn't hear that on the tape though, did you?
Y eso no lo escuchaste en la grabación de la llamada.
Lo que digo, no he prestado mucha atención al detalle,
Well, as
pero
I
puedo
said,
decir que no.
As I have not paid much attention to those details, but I could say no.
And I'm not saying by that you didn't yell to your neighbor across the way. I'm just saying that having yelled to your neighbor across the way, it just didn't make it onto that tape, did it?
Y yo no estoy diciendo que tú no le hayas gritado a la vecina que queda al otro lado, pero lo que te estoy diciendo es que aún habiéndole gritado a la vecina, eso sencillamente no se escuchó en la grabación.
Depende de cuál grabación, porque no existe solamente una.
Well, that would depend on which recording we're talking about because it's not just one.
Y si hablamos de las que están más lejos de mí, posible y no se escucha. De
And if we're
pronto,
talking about anyone who was further away from me, then it's possible you can't hear it there.
la única que podría haberse cogido más cercano sería la llamada que Mary estaba haciendo.
The only one that could have picked it up from closer was the call that Mary was making.
Correct.
Correcto.
Do you know, just so we're clear, you had yelled to your neighbor before Mary Kutcher got on her call, didn't you?
Pero para que esté claro, ¿tú estás consciente si tú le gritaste a tu vecina antes de que Mary tomara el teléfono?
Todo ha ocurrido tan rápido que no podría yo asegurar eso.
Well, everything happened so quickly that I wouldn't be able to assure you of that.
When you heard the noise that you now know to have been the gunshot, you did not know it was a gunshot then, correct?
Y cuando tú escuchaste el ruido que tú ahora sabes que fue un disparo, tú en ese momento no sabías que había sido un disparo, ¿verdad?
Correcto.
Correct.
I think you said you thought it was like a child's longboard, like a skateboard?
Y tú mencionaste que esto es como un longboard de lo que usan los niños, un skateboard, una
Correcto.
patineta. Yes,
Slapping on cement?
Dándole al concreto.
Correcto.
Correct.
And that's what you thought you heard.
Y eso fue lo que tú pensaste que había escuchado.
Así es.
That was so.
Is that because kids play out there sometimes and you've heard noises similar to that in the past out
Eso
in
porque
that
a
same
veces,
area?
eso es porque a veces los niños juegan allá afuera y tú has escuchado ruidos de esa clase en esa área.
Así es.
That is so.
So it made more sense that it was a noise from a child than a gunshot, correct?
Así que a ti te hacía más sentido que fuera un ruido de un niño a que fuera un disparo.
Por supuesto.
Of course.
Now, when you did hear that noise, thinking that it was a child, you went to find out what it was, correct?
Y cuando tú escuchaste ese ruido pensando que había sido un niño, tú saliste a ver qué estaba sucediendo.
Así es.
That is so.
Okay. And you left the kitchen area,
Y saliste del área de la cocina,
went to the sliding glass door,
fuiste a la puerta corrediza de cristal.
and that, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was partially open, but you had to open it the rest of the way to go out, correct?
Y ya estaba parcialmente abierta, pero tú tuviste que abrirla por completo para poder salir, ¿verdad?
Estaba abierta de tal manera que yo podía cruzar.
It was open so far that I was able to come across,
Without opening it further.
sin tener que abrirla más.
No.
No.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask you to demonstrate for me something,
Voy a pedirte que me demuestres algo.
because I'm wondering if you can tell us, and then I want you to show us in the courtroom,
Ujú.
when you heard the noise,
Porque lo que me estoy preguntando y quiero que nos lo demuestres y nos muestres en el sala cómo sería, es que cuando
What
tú
you-
escuchaste el ruido,
what you did in the kitchen or with the coffee,
¿qué tú hiciste en la cocina con el café o lo que fuera?
how you left the kitchen,
¿Cómo saliste de la cocina?
got to the sliding glass door,
¿Cómo llegaste a la puerta corrediza de
got
cristal?
through it,
¿La pasaste?
got to the patio,
¿Llegaste al patio
and looked down.
y miraste en aquella
Can you do
dirección?
that?
¿Lo puedes hacer?
Por supuesto.
Of course.
Your Honor, I would ask that the witness step down.
Te voy a pedir que pases entonces al frente y hagas la demostración.
As we do this, I'm going to presume that you were not wearing high heels.
Voy a asumir que esa noche no llevaba puesto taco.
I either apologize for asking you to do it in high heels, or I suggest that you take them off.
Te voy a pedir excusas si lo quieres hacer en los tacos altos o si te quieres quitar los zapatos.
So, to set this up, I need your help.
Porque
Tell
para
me
establecerlo necesito tu ayuda.
where the, whatever area, kitchen if it works, sliding glass door if it works.
Tú
You
escoges el
set
área.
the stage and tell us where you were and then what you did and what you had to get around to do it,
Tú
okay?
preparas la escena, lo que tú quieras escoger como si fuera la cocina, como queda el área de donde está la puerta corrediza, donde está la terraza. Tú preparas la escena y entonces nos describes qué fue lo que tú hiciste.
Lo más parecido a la arquitectura
Well,
de
the
los-
most similar to our architecture
es que la puerta podría estar en este sector.
would be that the sliding door could be in this area.
Aquí. Este
Like
es el
here.
sliding
This
door.
is the sliding glass door,
Exacto.
Exactly.
okay?
Column.
The column.
So,
And,
here is the
excuse me?
column.
And then you go out and look that way, correct?
Entonces tú saliste y miraste en esa
Okay.
dirección.
This is the kitchen.
Column. Just, I don't want to be the one testifying, so you do it,
Si lo puedes hacer tú porque
Here
tú
is the
quieres.
kitchen.
okay?
They have it like perdón.
Either way, if you can say it in English and you're comfortable, tell
Aquí
us.
está el mesón.
This is where the counter is.
So, si este es el mesón,
There, you have the counter here.
aquí está hacia el otro lado. Esto está, hay un muro.
And there's a wall here on the other
Yes.
side.
Y este es el área de trabajo donde está el sink.
And this would be the work area where we have the sink
Correct.
and the window.
Okay,
Esta es mi posición.
And this was my position.
correct. So, here's what I'm going to do. As close to the speed as you think you did.
Así que lo que voy a hacer es
Don't
que a
rush
la velocidad, lo más cercano a la velocidad que tú
it.
piensas
Don't
que lo
rush it
hiciste.
and don't go slow.
O sea, no quiero que lo hagas demasiado rápido ni que tampoco muy lento.
I'm going to clap my hands.
Pero él va a hacer.
And if
un
you
aplauso.
looked at the window when you heard the noise, I want you to look at the window. If you had a cup of coffee in your hand, I want you to put it down. You tell me what you did and do it in the timing as best you can that you did it, okay?
El agua ya estaba en la cafetera.
The water was already in the coffee maker.
Coloqué el vaso.
And I put the cup.
En ese momento estaban los llantos.
And at that moment, I heard the cries.
Okay, you.
Terminé de colocar
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you for a second. The point that I'm at is when you heard the noise,
El
not
punto que yo
the, not
te-
the cries.
El punto que te
okay?
quiero llevar es cuando tú escuchaste el ruido, no el llanto.
sonido.
The sound,
Corro.
I ran,
Cross. And I grabbed the column. Cogí la columna.
I held onto the column,
Okay,
Hice así.
and I went like this.
okay.
Agarraba la columna.
I went like that to
Right.
look around.
And I'm going to have to ask you to do it again.
Te voy a pedir que lo hagas otra vez.
Because I just want to make sure that the jury has a chance now that they know what you're doing, to just watch you do it one more time in about the time that you did it.
Porque quiero estar seguro de que ahora que el jurado sabe qué es lo que estamos haciendo, que ellos puedan medir el tiempo y ver la
La
posibilidad.
otra persona que estaba en la cocina era Mary.
Well, the other person who was in the kitchen with me was Mary.
Okay?
Estaba de este lado.
She was right on this side,
Recostado.
like reclining.
Okay.
Escucho el sonido.
I heard the noise,
Corro.
I ran,
Cruzo.
I went across,
And grab.
and I peered.
Great. And then when you peered out, you looked. Thank you very much.
Muy bien, gracias.
You heard the noise.
Tú escuchaste el ruido.
It took the time that it took you to get out, as we did, and then you looked down, and that's when you saw the people in the area that you've talked about already,
Tú
correct?
tomaste el tiempo que te tomó en salir, dar la vuelta, cruzar, salir afuera, y entonces miraste en la dirección, y ahí fue, cuando miraste la dirección donde escuchaste el ruido, ahí fue que viste las personas que tú dices que viste.
Correcto.
That's correct.
And I think you said, at that point, was it still dark?
Y me parece que dijiste que en ese momento estaba oscuro todavía.
And I think that
Yes, correct.
I think you testified that you could not see very well, correct?
Me parece que testificaste que que no podías ver muy bien.
La poca luz que había de las casas no permitía ver con claridad, pero se veían los
Well, what little light there was from the different houses did not allow you to see clearly, but you could still see
la silueta.
The silhouettes, the shapes.
Yes. And the silhouettes you saw, I think you testified to, was that there was a person crouching down over another person?
Y las siluetas que tú dijiste que viste fue una persona agachada sobre otra persona?
Correcto.
Correct.
And did that person, you're looking from the back perspective, you'll see his back, is that
Tú estabas
correct?
mirando de una perspectiva de la espalda de él.
Yeah.
Tú estabas mirando la espalda.
So you see that person like this, correct? Not on his knees, but standing like this,
Tú ves a
correct?
la persona así, no que estaba de rodillas, sino así parado de cuclillas.
Me parece más que he siempre dicho porque vi más la parte de las rodillas en el piso.
Well,
Los
I have always
brazos-
said, it seems to me more that what I saw was the person with the knees on the ground.
Ujú.
The person on top with knees on the ground.
La persona que estaba arriba tenía las rodillas en el suelo.
Sí.
Yes.
And you said that they had their hands on the person who was underneath?
Y tú dices que tenían las manos sobre la persona que estaba abajo.
Tienen que tenerlas en alguna parte, en alguna posición de la otra persona. Por
He
el
must have had
equilibrio
it-
que estaba haciendo.
He must have had it in some part, on some part of the other person, because of what the person was doing,
Por el equilibrio más.
in order to maintain a balance.
Okay. The way he was leaning over?
La forma en que estaba reclinado hacia el frente.
Correcto.
Did
Correct.
you also say that you thought he did something with his pocket?
Me parece que mencionaste algo del bolsillo.
Nunca.
No, not at all.
Did you say that in deposition? That you thought that he had done something with putting something near his pocket?
Absolutamente no.
No, absolutely not.
Then the person who was on top, could you see if they were moving, the person on the bottom is moving their hands or their arms at all?
I'm
Could you
sorry,
see
Calvin.
that?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Person on top. Could you see if that person on top was moving the hands or the arms of the person on the bottom?
La persona que estaba arriba, tú no pudiste distinguir si estaba moviéndole los brazos a la persona que estaba abajo.
No.
No.
And the person on top did not respond to the first two times that you called to him, correct?
Y la persona que estaba arriba no respondió las primeras dos veces que tú lo llamaste, ¿correcto?
Correcto.
And then the third time he said, just call the police.
Y la tercera vez lo que dijo fue solamente llama a la policía.
Correcto.
Call the police. Correct.
And he then got up, correct?
Y entonces se levantó, se paró.
Correcto.
And you said he
Correct.
was walking around.
Y tú dices que caminaba.
Caminó en dirección de los botes de basura y regresó
He walked
hacia
in
el
the
cuerpo.
he walked in the direction of the trash cans, and then he returned to the body.
Puedo asumir que lo hizo tal vez unas 2, 3 veces antes de que apareciera la persona con el flashlight.
And I would assume that he did it about 2 or 3 times before this person with the flashlight showed up.
And he was putting his hand on his head.
Y se estaba poniendo la mano en la cabeza.
Correcto.
Correct.
How did he look to you? What did he look like he was doing?
¿Cómo se veía? O sea, ¿qué te pareció a ti que estaba haciendo?
No es cuestión de yo opinar, ¿verdad?
Well, it's not a matter of me giving an opinion.
Well,
Permiso.
Excuse me.
Pero tenía una mano en su cabeza.
But he had one hand on his head.
Puedo asumir que en una posición tal vez como preocupado.
I would
Podría
assume,
expresar así.
like in a position like a person who's concerned.
Just a moment, if I might. Was he acting as though he was confused?
¿Estaba actuando como una persona confundida?
No lo entiendo así.
Not to my understanding.
Do you remember in a deposition, we asked a question
¿Tú recuerdas que en una deposición
About
te hicieron una pregunta?
your impression that he might be confused about what just happened?
Sobre si te dio la impresión a ti de que él podía estar confundido de lo que acababa de suceder.
Es posible que sí sea. Ujú.
It's possible that was so, yes.
And do you remember your answer?
¿Y recuerda lo que contestaste?
He mencionado que para mí él estaba en tono sí como preocupado.
Well, I have mentioned that for me, I would think he was acting like concerned.
Sort of like he couldn't believe what just happened?
Subject to that's call for speculation.
Well, then I'll approach with her answer to the deposition if I might.
If she needs it to refresh her
Sure,
recollection.
I'll do that. So if I might approach the witness. Let me do this and show you, this is the deposition that we took of you.
Déjame mostrarte porque esta fue la deposición que te tomamos.
Focus your attention on page 25.
Voy a traer tu atención a la página 25.
Starting with line 6. Let's start there.
Comenzando con la línea 6. Vamos
So
a
if
empezar
you
por ahí.
would. Have you had a chance to review that?
¿Ya tuviste la oportunidad
Sí.
de revisarlo? Yes.
In that statement, did you say, how would you, the question being, did you see him go back towards the body? Yes. And how would you describe?
To this still is calling for speculation.
While it may be speculation, Your Honor, she testified to it in her deposition. I'm refreshing her recollection. I want to now
Well-
question her about that.
Well, but the proper way to refresh somebody's recollection is to say, have you now read it? Does that refresh her recollection? And see if it gives her an ability to give an answer.
Okay, then I'll just answer that way. In response to a question, how would you?
asked her if that has, by reading that, has that refreshed her recollection?
I thought I did that at the bench, but I'll do it
No, you
again.
didn't.
Did that refresh your recollection in what you said in your deposition?
¿Con esto te refresca la memoria de lo que dijiste en la deposición?
Sí.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so let me ask you, Ken. How would you describe his behavior?
Déjame,
Again, I object to calling for speculation.
Well, it's her description overruled.
Yes. How would you describe how he acted?
¿Cómo describirías tú el comportamiento? ¿Cómo actuó él?
Si no más recuerdo, acabo de decirlo en español que como de una manera preocupante.
Well, if I remember correctly, and I have just mentioned it a little while ago too, he was acting like in a concerned manner. I mean,
Realmente es una de una manera como que pasó confuso.
well, it really, in a way, like what just happened, like confused.
Okay.
En mis palabras pudiera utilizar muchas otras para describir exactamente la misma manera en la que se pudo apreciar
And
desde mi punto de vista.
in my own words, I could probably use a lot of other words to describe, from my point of view, what it appeared like.
Is it accurate to say that he looked confused to you?
Pero sería justo decir que a ti te pareció confundido.
Podría ser.
It could be.
And that he walked away from the body and he walked towards the dog. And did you say he had his hand here? You said here at one point.
Mhm.
Also here, correct?
Y tú dices que tenía las manos acá, allá.
Por la silueta, las sombras.
From the silhouettes and the shadows.
Definitivamente una mano estaba tocando su cabeza
He definitely had one hand touching his head,
y la otra la parte de sus caderas.
and the other one was around the waist.
Was it like this, somewhere here or here?
Pero era aquí, en algún lugar aquí o acá,
And a hand over here?
y una mano acá,
And walking?
y caminando.
Pacing, you said?
Tú dices que caminaba hacia adelante y hacia atrás.
Caminó en dirección, regresó, volvió a caminar, volvió a regresar, caminó el hombre de la luz apareció.
He walked in that direction, came back, then he walked in that direction again, came back again, and then he walked in that direction, and the man with the flashlight turned up.
Walked up, walked back, walked up, walked back, walked up, and the man with the flashlight came?
Dice que él caminó hacia allá, volvió, caminó hacia allá, volvió, caminó hacia allá, y ahí fue que apareció el hombre del flashlight.
Correcto.
Correct.
Was that part of what led you to believe he was acting confused?
¿Eso fue parte de lo que te hizo pensar a ti que él estaba actuando como confundido?
Puede ser.
It could be. Ajá.
I think you were asked if you had known George Zimmerman before that night. Had you?
Y te tengo que preguntar si tú habías conocido a George Zimmerman antes de esa noche. ¿Lo habías conocido?
Nunca.
Never.
Did you ever, when the man with the flashlight was there, did that flashlight allow you to get a better look at who you now know to be George Zimmerman?
Cuando llegó allí el hombre con el flashlight, ¿esa luz del flashlight te permitió ver mejor a esta persona que ahora tú sabes que era George Zimmerman?
No.
No.
Never saw him again that night or?
¿No lo volviste a ver ni esa noche ni nunca más?
That night.
A la persona de la
Esa
luz
noche.
o a Zimmerman.
You mean the person with the flashlight or Zimmerman?
George Zimmerman.
A Zimmerman.
Nunca lo he visto en persona.
I've never-
Solamente en las fotografías que se han expuesto de él.
I've never seen him in person. I've just seen the photographs that have been shown of him.
On TV and whatnot. Could you ever see him good enough when he was leaning over the body or when he stood up to see any blood on the back of his head?
¿En algún momento lo pudiste ver suficientemente bien cuando estaba recostado, reclinado sobre el cuerpo o cuando estaba parado y caminando como para poder ver que había sangre en su cabeza?
No.
No.
How about any blood on his nose as he was walking back those 2 times that you saw him walk back?
O sangre en la nariz cuando venía caminando de regreso, en esas 2 ocasiones que tú dices que lo viste caminando de regreso.
Como dije en el principio, estaba tan oscuro que las pocas luces no permitían describir con precisión.
Like I said from the beginning, it was so dark that what little light there was would not allow you to determine the details and precision.
Just a moment, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Yes, ma'am, just briefly. Ms. Moore, do you have any idea what was going on in that man's mind when he was walking around back and forth to the body and to the receptacle?
¿Tú tienes la menor idea de qué estaba pasando por la mente de ese señor cuando estaba caminando, yendo y viniendo del cuerpo al zapacón, al basurero?
No puedo, no me siento en la capacidad de yo poner palabras sobre lo
Well,
que
I
estamos
can't. I don't feel capable of putting words into his mouth or his thoughts.
All right. Ms. Moore, let me ask you to look at the screen again, stage 37. Judge, could you just hit this one more time?
Te voy a pedir que
Thank
mires
you
la
so much.
pantalla.
And Judge, I don't know if I referred to this as stage 37 the first time I showed it to her, so I'll do that now for the record.
Y no sé si
Ms.
me
Moore,
siento en la 37.
do the bushes I've circled, although not the ones in front of your or behind your residence, are those the same height as the one behind your residence?
Estos arbustos que se ven aquí, que se mencionó que hay unos detrás de tu residencia, estos que están aquí son como de la misma altura de los de tu residencia.
Exactamente, y también la división plástica que hay entre arbusto.
They're exactly
y
the
las
same,
plantas.
as well as that plastic divider that there is between the bushes and
La otra casa.
the porch
Sí.
All right.
on the side.
And the columns behind your residence, are they the same as the columns on the rest of the neighbors' yards?
Y las columnas que hay en tu residencia son iguales que las columnas que hay en los demás patios de los demás residentes.
Sí.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. May Ms. Mora be excused?
She may. Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. You are excused.
Okay, muchas gracias.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for the evening. We'll start again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And before we recess, I'm going to give you my instructions again. During the overnight, you are not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. You're not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. You're not to use any type of an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do I have your assurance that you will abide by these instructions? Okay, with that, put your notepads down, follow Deputy Jarvis. Have a good evening. Mr. Guy? Thank you. Is there anything that you may be seated? Is there anything that we need to take up before we recess for the evening? From the defense?
We did have this one matter I wanted to file before we earlier with the deposition of the witness, Professor Pleasant. The deposition was taken, although it was not able to be taken with defense counsel and the client present. I'm awaiting the recording of that to provide to counsel. It's possible that we'll be able to have that issue resolved, but I want to update you on the status. We got it almost all the way done. I'm going to hand them the videotape later today.
Okay, well, let me know the progress of that. Anything else?
Just could you know when he's leaving?
He is gone, and that's the reason it had to be taken when it did, is he left for 6 weeks hiking in the New Mexico desert. Although there is a possibility that he will be potentially reachable by Skype, depending on when they try to get in touch with him if that becomes necessary.
Okay, well, if you'll let me know how that progresses. Anything further?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Court is in recess till 9 a.m.